Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through the quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark.
Story 1. The unspoken story of me. Let's go back to my childhood so you understand the feeling. There are two types of schools, right? Government schools and private schools. In the beginning, I was admitted to private school, but after a year I was moved to a government school. Because of that, I ended up one class below in the government school. What I used to do was this. In a month, I go about 20 days to the private school and 10 days to the government school. In my private school, all my friends were in my class. But in the government school, all my friends were one class above me. That meant whenever I wanted to talk to them or meet them, I had to go to their classroom. Every time I went there, I saw this girl. I never spoke to her. In fact, I hardly spoke to anyone outside my friend group in the government school. Everyone thought I was an outsider, and I acted like one too. I just caught glimpses of her, but didn't feel anything. I was in second or third grade at that time. Years passed like that. When I moved on from preschool to high school and private school, we all ended up in the same classroom. Despite being in a lower class in the government school, I was actually a class ahead in the private school. Suddenly, I was in the same class as that girl, but still we didn't talk. Back when I was in preschool, I went to a tuition class. After coming to high school, I switched tuitions, but had to leave a new one because I punched one of the teachers. So I returned to my previous tuition. By then it was around June or July of 6th grade. And guess what? That same girl was there too. At first, I still didn't think about her much. Just small chit-chat like what's the homework? Or similar. Some of my friends were in the tuition too, so I talked to them. Slowly, my friendship with that girl began to form, but we still weren't close. By 7th grade, you could say I was a one-ape cool dude. If you saw me then, you wouldn't be able to hold back your laughter. Even I can't when I see my old pictures. Around that time, the girl had a BFF, and together they started making fun of me. I didn't even understand half the time. Things changed after school reopened. I had to cut my long hair. I was considered a genius back then. My roll number was 5, but a year later it dropped to 23. Still not bad. All the teachers in tuition liked me, and people even asked me to help that girl. By then, you could say we were kind of friends, but still not talking much. A year later, my roll number became 55, in Section B. All my genuine friends were in B section, so I felt comfortable there. This was the turning point of my life. My personality changed. I'd always been shy, but in B section I became extroverted. Within a month or two, I got my first girlfriend. I started talking to all the girls in my class. Even that girl, the one from all those years ago, began laughing at my jokes. I was happy, but I still didn't realize I loved her. After 3 to 4 months, I got another girlfriend. Yes, I was two-timing. All my friends knew. Even in tuition, that girl was hearing about it. I didn't care then, but soon it would become my biggest mistake. By the end of the year, I broke up with the second girl and got another girlfriend, still two-timing. Then came 10th grade, the worst year of my teenage life. Both girls found out. The second one just broke up quietly. The first one, who'd been with me for a year and a few months, took me aside and slapped me many times, asking why I did that. She was good to me, and I didn't even know why I was doing it. I guess I was searching for the right girl. Thankfully, no one spread the story about me being a two-timer. 2 or 3 months later, I got another girlfriend. But at tuition, I saw that same girl, the one I'd known since 2nd grade, talking to her BFF about her boyfriend. My heart hurt. I didn't understand why. That day, I didn't go to school. I stayed home, scrolling my phone, feeling sad and lonely. For about a week, I didn't go to tuition or school. I barely left my room. Just came out to eat or go to the bathroom. Another week passed, and I returned to tuition. By then, I knew I had a crush on her, but she had a boyfriend, so I couldn't do anything. I decided to wait. 2 months later, they broke up. It wasn't serious for them anyway. I waited about a week to give her some peace. After tuition one day, I asked her to stay back. I wanted to talk to her. Nobody in my area watches anime or reads manga, so nobody could have guessed I was going to confess. When we were alone, I told her I had loved her for years, and if she wanted, she could be my girlfriend. She didn't say anything, just told me to wait. I thought she needed time because of her breakup, but I didn't know that would be my biggest mistake. 2 or 3 days later, everyone in my class and tuition knew about my confession. They also somehow knew about my two-timing. Before, only my friends had known. Now everyone knew. My current girlfriend was hurt by the rumor. I told her it was true, but that I wasn't like that anymore. She hasn't broken up with me yet. When I asked the girl about my confession, she said she didn't like me that way and wanted to be just friends. When I asked if she told anyone, she admitted she'd told her friends. She also told me I wasn't worth anyone because of how characterless I was. She'd heard me boasting before. She'd seen the worst side of me, so it wasn't unexpected. Still, it hurt. After that, I didn't go to tuition or class for a month. It's been 2 months since then. I still don't go to school, but I go to tuition maybe once a week. I still see my crush there. She only talks to me about homework now. I got another girlfriend about half a month ago. My current girlfriend doesn't know. Somehow my crush does. I guess my friends were talking about me two-timing again. My chance with her is gone. But still, I've loved her for years. I began developing feelings for her in 6th grade. You could say she was my true love and will be for my entire life. Story 2. I moved my family into a picture-perfect small town. Now I know why nobody ever leaves. When I accepted the job as a product lifecycle analyst in Glimmervale County, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. I hadn't even heard of Nylatech before I saw the posting. But the deeper I looked, the more it felt like a gold mine. Paid relocation for my whole family. A remote role with only 1 or 2 mandatory days in the office each month. Their headquarters sat right in the center of Glimmervale, the city the county was named after, and as long as I lived within a 35-minute commute, I was good. And Nylatech wasn't just some fly-by-night startup either. They were a government contractor, growing year after year, with one of the best employee retention rates in the industry. Everything about the offer screamed stability. The relocation stipend was generous, too. Generous enough that we could move into Dunson Township, a wealthy little enclave tucked into the northeast hills of the county. It was everything the brochures promised, one of the best school systems in the state, pristine colonial-style homes, seasonal festivals, and a well-known annual celebration called a Harvest Festival, which happened every October at their community center. It was beautiful. Hallmark, really. The house we found looked like something out of a magazine spread. The entirety of the neighborhood seemed friendly, polite, and welcoming. Except for one, of course. Our neighbor. Something about him was wrong. If not wrong, unnatural. The first time we encountered him was the night we moved in. By the time we pulled onto Hopper Street, the kids had been out cold for hours. Julia and I just sat there for a moment in the driveway, headlights washing over our new house. Our fresh start. No more city smog, no more sirens, no more factories. Just the Appalachians. A sky full of stars, the moon casting its pale light over the neighborhood like a filter. The street didn't even have proper lamps, but the glow was enough. The outlines of the trees and hills were more beautiful than the colors themselves, like we'd stepped into a postcard. When we opened the car doors, it felt like entering another world. The night air hit first, cool, sharp, clean in a way that burned the nose. Nature's version of a reset button. Crickets chirping waves, small animals shuffling the brush across the street. And for the first time in 13 hours of driving, I didn't feel suffocated. Julia shepherded the kids inside while I started hauling overnight bags and a cooler from the back. I must have only been outside 20 minutes, maybe less, when I heard it. The suction hiss of a door opening, followed by the creak of a screen door. And then everything stopped, not just the rustling in the bushes. The crickets, too. Gone. Silence hit me like freight. You know how they say when everything's quiet, it means a predator's close? That's exactly what it felt like. Not goosebumps yet, but that chill prickle under the skin that precedes them. The sixth sense that eyes are on you. I froze in the driveway. Cooler clutched to my chest, staring at a yard I hadn't even noticed until now. No porch light, just a figure in the doorway, half hidden by the glare of my headlights. A faint flicker from inside, probably a TV, outlined him in a wavering glow. I managed, aiming for casual but landing somewhere between shaky and awkward. Hey, lovely morning we're having. I'm your new neighbor, Clint. Nothing except what appeared to be the silhouette of his head turning to face me. I tried again. I see you're an early bird, too. What I got back wasn't words, just a grunt, then the heavy thud of a door closing, followed by the snap of the screen door smacking shut. And the second it did, the crickets started up again, like nothing had happened. I stood there a beat, cooler in hand, feeling like I'd already failed some kind of test. Then I went back to unloading, killed the headlights, and locked up. Julia and I whispered about the week's plans, and before long we were out cold, lulled to sleep by the steady drone of insects chirping through the cracked window. Still, as Julia drifted off, I couldn't shake the awkward thought. Our first impression hadn't gone so great. The morning came too early. Well, morning is generous. We pulled in at 2 a.m., but kids don't care about details. Jackson, 6 years old and powered entirely by chaos, launched himself onto our bed at 7 a.m. sharp. Mom, Dad, come on. All our stuff's still in the car. I'm bored. I've been up forever. Come on, come on, come on. Gabby wandered in, rubbing her eyes. Jackson, I grabbed your DS last night. Before I could thank her, Jackson scrambled off the bed. My jaw clenched as his foot planted squarely in my crotch on his way off. Who needs caffeine when you've got kids? Julia and I went into full parental delegation mode. She'd start breakfast. I'd haul in the essential kitchen boxes, and then work through the rest of the car, which, honestly, was fine. It gave me my first look at Hopper Street in daylight. The neighborhood was even prettier in the sun. Grill of the Oval, they called it. Dunson's big, family-friendly community. Tree-lined streets. Houses tucked back just enough that you felt like you had privacy. Our place faced 3 wooded lots across the road, with more houses nestled deeper in the trees. To the left, another patch of woods. To the right, the neighbor, the man from last night. His house didn't match the rest. Not in a broken-down way, exactly. Just different. A short, waist-high picket fence ringed the yard, paint chipped and flaking. Weedy wildflowers sprouted tall in patches, where everyone else's lawns looked freshly groomed. A couple pieces of siding sagged loose on the front, but the porch itself was neatly arranged. 2 stout posts in the middle of the yard held pulley joints strung with nylon wire. On the posts, lanterns dangled from metal hooks on one end of the wire. Bird feeders swayed lazily across the nylon, traveling to the porch, where the cord were tied off to metal loops attached to hooks drilled into the porch posts. If you ignored the rough edges, it was almost quaint, idyllic even, but it didn't belong here. Not on Hopper Street, not in Dunson Township. It was outdated, looked like it clashed with HOA, and just fit more of a rural aesthetic. I told myself maybe we just disturbed his peace last night. Maybe it wasn't a talk to the new guy at 2 a.m. type. I was halfway convinced when I saw the curtain reel close in the corner of my view. He'd been watching, and now he knew I was watching back. Second impression, nailed it. Most of the weekend blurred into unpacking boxes and trying to make the place feel like home. By Sunday evening, though, we finally got a taste of neighborhood. A group of couples stopped by with a gift basket and warm smiles. Cookies, wine, the usual welcome to the neighborhood stuff. Then there were a few handmade candles and some pre-made herb mixes. A crafty bunch. They hung around the porch, trading restaurant recommendations and small talk. It couldn't have been more than an hour, but it felt good to put names to faces. Donna and Gerald ducked out first, then Tracy and Dan. Leah headed back to cook dinner for her kids, leaving her husband, Will, leaning on the railing with me. He sipped a beer, let a pause hang in the air, then leaned in a little. "So," he asked casually, "how's Curtis, man?" "Who?" "Curtis, your neighbor." "Oh, he's fine, I guess. Doesn't seem like he wants much to do with us. But then again, we haven't exactly been quiet while moving in." "That's not what I mean." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Will gave me this look. Part smirk, part warning. Curtis belongs in jail. They never proved anything. But his wife disappeared back when I was a kid. Never found her. Whole town knows the story. Guy's a psycho. Doesn't talk to anyone. If I were you, I'd steer clear. I know my face must have betrayed me. Because Will chuckled. Then he straightened up like he'd already decided the conversation was over. "Well, I'll see you later, man." "What the fuck? You're just gonna leave me with that?" He turned back, almost like an afterthought, put a hand on my shoulder. "Oh, right. Sorry. I'm sure it's safe now. Lightning doesn't strike twice." And just like that, he was gone. I stood on the porch with that line rattling in my skull, not sure if it was supposed to be a joke or the worst kind of reassurance. Either way, my skin crawled, because when the crowd left and the last car pulled away, I realized something. The crickets were gone for the whole visit. Silence. Heavy and total, just like the night we arrived. And I couldn't shake the thought. Was he out there somewhere watching? I know how this must sound. Up until this point, nothing had really happened. Curtis scared the bugs off my property, sure. I'd even wake up at night and hear crickets inside the house, like they'd been driven to the walls. But beyond that, nothing concrete. Life was good. Work was easy. Maybe 3 hours of real work a day. Jackson thrived at school. So popular we had to cap sleepovers because half the neighborhood kids wanted to camp out in our basement. Gabby had her own little circle, Sydney and Kayla, plus her first real crush on a boy named Dugan from a few streets down. She'd always asked to go walk his family's dog with him. Jules was already tight with the local moms, spending her days getting to know the town while I stayed buried in spreadsheets. We were fitting in perfectly, I'd say in a picture bookesque way. We knew everyone always likes the new people in town, but our assimilation seemed effortless. That's why what I learned at Gabby's parent-teacher conference gutted me. Mr. Parks was a pre-algebra teacher, a wiry guy with a Hollywood picture smile. I expected him to walk us through test scores and homework. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and asked, "So you guys got that nice colonial on Hopper Street?" It was strange he knew exactly where we lived, but he explained it away quick. "Dunson doesn't get too many homes for sale per year. Nobody likes to leave." I nodded, casual. "Yeah, it's a nice place. Bigger than we expected." "Well," he said, "you must have gotten a pretty sweet deal on it, all things considered." Jules frowned. "What do you mean?" That's when he gave us the look, the one where you could tell he knew something we didn't. "Oh, you really don't know, do you?" My stomach dropped. "Don't know what?" He hesitated, but only for a second. "The family before you went missing." He paused, almost theatrically. Or maybe they left. Hard to say. They left all their stuff, though, so I assumed the worst. My thoughts snapped back to our move-in ready house. The couches, the beds, all those pre-furnished perks. Mr. Parks didn't stop. I guess they don't ever disclose that kind of thing, since technically no one died in it. That's when Jules broke. Tears welled and spilled, and she huffed before purposely striding from a room. I glared at Parks, my face burning hot, but he only threw his hands up like it was some innocent slip. When I turned to follow Jules, I caught his reflection in the classroom door's window. Maybe it was just a glare, but for half a second, it looked like he was smiling. When I swung the door open, I gave one last glance back. His face was apologetic, his hands already working their way back up. Then I turned the corner and followed my wife to the car. The ride home was short, broken only by a stop at the hardware store. Julia was adamant about making sure the house was safe, so we stocked up on new locks and deadbolts for every entrance. Even the shed at the back of property got a new latch and a combination lock. I never told her about Curtis's wife. Didn't want to scare her. Sure, we had the relocation stipend, but not enough to just up and leave. We were locked in financially, if not literally. And I kept telling myself, maybe Curtis was just a bitter old man. Better not to plant seeds of paranoia in her head. The seeds that gnawed at the back of my mind since we'd moved in. I had tried to speak to him prior, but I left the ball on his side of the court long ago. If he didn't want to talk to us, then let him want nothing from us. That evening, I was determined to have each new lock installed. At the time, I was grabbing the last one to take out back. The kids were leaving on a bike ride with Dugan. Curtis was out as well, tying something to his fence, when strolled by walking toward my shed. He was older than I realized, maybe late 60s. Scruffy gray beard, scalp bare as bone. He didn't look at me once as I walked to the tree line, just kept working his knots. As the evergreen swallowed him from view, the crickets swelled, every step deeper into the yard, louder. Their endless drone had been gnawing at me for months now. At first, they'd been across the street, then around the house's perimeter. By October, it felt like at least a few of them were peddling their chirps in my house every other night. If I was upstairs, I'd hear them in the kitchen. If I was downstairs, I heard them in the basement or in the attic. I tried bug bombs, hired pest control. Nothing worked. I could hear them every night, but I'd never managed to rid myself of them. So by the time I was kneeling on the shed ramp, fumbling screws in the half-dark, sweat beginning to sheen and glisten on my forehead, I was at my limit. The droning in my ears, the slick handle of the screwdriver, the sheer futility of it all. I fumbled with the buttons of my flannel and flung it into the brush with a growl of frustration. I could feel the heat of anger at the top of my skull, myself failing to focus. Eventually, the October air cooled me as I finished the final screw on the latch. The shed door shut smooth. The new lock clicked into place. One small victory. I stepped off the ramp and went to retrieve my shirt. That's when I saw it. A footpath into the woods. Grass pressed down, not from one trip, but many. Squatted spots along the way, like someone had paused, crouched, waited. So many spots. And 30 feet into the tree line, barely visible in the dusk, a trail camera. My stomach dropped. I'd fucking had it. None of my anger was about the fucking bugs. I've been alive 38 years. I know what bugs sound like. This was different. By then I was certain that if Curtis was a serial killer, he was a creepy asshole of a neighbor who sets a camera up in someone else's backyard. I grabbed the strap looped around the tree, hunting for the buckle, and my frustration turned into a blunt, stupid rhythm. Pull, cuss, yank. The strap slid. I cursed louder. I slammed it back into the trunk, yanked it hard, the nylon whining in my hands. Fuck you. Fuck your stupid fucking camera. Don't fuck with me. As the strap broke, I threw the damn thing into the brush. It landed with a crash, branches snapping, leaves protesting. For a second the crunch kept going, like an echo stretching out as if a squirrel got spooked and scattered away. Maybe a few. And then nothing. Dead quiet. My anger died the second the silence hit. That uncanny stillness pressed in, heavier than the crickets ever were. I bent, picked up the busted trail cam, and stiffly scanned the trees before walking back toward the yard. Curtis was still outside. He wasn't trimming hedges anymore. He was on his back deck, filling a generator with gas. I stopped at the fence, holding the camera up. My voice came out hard but shaky. You lose something? He glanced at me, then back at what he was doing. Hey, don't ignore me. This yours? Why the fuck was it pointed at my yard? This time he turned, walked up to the fence, reached out and took the camera from my hand. For a second, his face shifted, a flash of concern, gone almost as soon as it appeared. He gave the faintest shake of his head and pressed the camera back into my palms. Then he turned away. Something in me snapped. You know you can use English, right? He didn't answer. I threw the trail cam at the edge of his garden bed. It clattered against the pavers, loud in the stillness. He glanced back once. Not angry, not offended. Just resigned. A face like someone bracing for something inevitable. Then he slid his glass door shut behind him and disappeared into the house. I stood there feeling like a kid who just mouthed off at the wrong adult, but I wasn't about to try and undo it. I walked back to my house. Inside, the air smelled of one of the homemade candles from a neighborhood gift basket the first week we were here. Jules greeted me with a smile, happy I'd finished locking everything down. I could hear footsteps scurrying upstairs. My mood washed slightly, happy I was with my family. I smiled back, but my hands still itched with the memory of the camera. Later that night, long after Julia and the kids had gone to bed, I caught him again. Just a silhouette in his yard, leaning on the fence line like he was standing watch. He didn't look at me, didn't wave, just faced my house and the street, still as a scarecrow, until I shut the curtains. The rest of that week, the week leading up to the Harvest Festival, passed in a blur, despite being the first week of October. Every house in town was already draped in Halloween decorations. Every house except Curtis's, of course. Gabby spent days agonizing over what she'd wear for her school's Halloween dance. Jackson, he was Batman. Every single day. Julia and I barely had time for Halloween antics yet. The township committee had already roped us into volunteering for the Harvest Festival. Seemed harmless enough. Get close with the neighbors. Fit in. I signed up as an assistant games director for the kids. Julia would help in the kitchen. The festival ran 3 nights. Honestly, it wasn't as big as I'd expected, considering how heavily the township advertised it. Hardly any food trucks, barely any rides, just a carousel, a miniature Ferris wheel, a scattering of booths. The booths were stranger than I expected. 2. The pumpkin patch was just a few rows of carved gourds already prepped to be thrown away, their inside showing a little rot, appearing slightly soft. And at the kids' craft table, I could swear I heard them humming in unison a dry, rhythmic rasp I wasn't familiar with, but was unnerving. Whenever kids do anything and you pull out of context, they just seem like little creeps, even my own sometimes. The first 2 days of Fest, I was swamped running games. On the last day, they stuck me in the dunk tank, not with water either. The local winery had filled it with their signature red. You'd think that would be fun. It wasn't. The wine stained everything it touched, left me sticky, and by the end of the day my skin was dyed and my thighs were raw. Eventually, it all wrapped up with the Harvest Feast, a glorified Thanksgiving dinner under a massive rental tent. Rows of folding tables, buffet lines, the whole town crammed together with paper plates and 4 smiles. The food was edible, the turkey especially. Julia leaned over and whispered that it was seasoned the same way as those neighbor spice packets we'd been gifted when we first moved in. The ones we tried once and immediately tossed. I was picking at mine when Mr. Hunt, one of the older guys, always too loud, made an offhand comment as I asked for a thigh. "Careful," he said, grinning. "Curtis loves dark meat too." The table laughed. I didn't. For the first time, it really hit me. Maybe Curtis wasn't cold because he was a loner. Maybe he just didn't like me, didn't like us. And the thought dug into my chest. Did my neighbor just hate me because I was black? The dinner broke up early when the power went out. Grid-wide outage. Most people left. Dugan and his parents gave the kids a ride home. Julia and I stayed behind to help clean the tent for another 45 minutes, then headed out as the sky went dusky. On the drive home, my head kept drifting back to Curtis. He'd ticked every box of suspicion in the quietest, most boring ways. I kept telling myself I was paranoid, that I was the one letting other people's gossip shape my judgment. But Will's joke about his wife, Mr. Park's smug smirk, the way the town seemed to close ranks, whenever Curtis was mentioned, something felt wrong. When we pulled into the driveway, the mailbox flag was up. A single blank envelope, no return address. I shrugged it off. Probably an ad, I said. I opened out of habit. Yep, roofing company. Once inside, I sat on the island in the kitchen. Jules and I got washed up, and we watched Scream 1996 on our iPad while lounging on the living room couch. I'd shown it to her back when we started dating, and it soon became her favorite movie. The first scene was so iconic to us. It was ironic too, considering we just changed the locks during the prior week. Eventually, the movie wrapped up with the iconic twist as darkness showed from all of our windows. The power was still out. Candles glowed in dim clusters. We called it an early night. But I couldn't let it be. I kept replaying the way people talked about Curtis. I kept seeing the camera in my hand. I told Julia I'd walk the perimeter and lock up. Instead, I found myself opening the envelope again, staring at the message inside until the ink blurred. I don't know why I told my wife it was a roofing ad. Maybe I wanted it to be. But when I unfolded the paper again, there weren't any coupons. Just one line scrawled in ink, so heavy it bled to the page. I made my way to the front door, then I stepped outside. My motion sensor porch light staggered to life as I crossed the driveway, across the yard, towards the fence. Curtis's lantern swung and threw lazy bands of light over the tall weeds in his yard. His screen door was hooked open. I called softly a couple times, "Curtis," and heard nothing but the brittle echo of my voice. I tossed a stone at his porch steps. It bounced, nothing more. I turned to head back and froze. A sound crawled out of the dark, familiar and wrong. Stridulation, the dry rasp of crickets, but slower, deliberate, like someone trying to mimic their cadence. A soft croak rolled through the yard. In the half-light, a silhouette moved along the side of my garage, shoulders brushed briefly by the glow of Curtis's yard lanterns. "Dugan," I said, squinting. The kid moved like a puppet along the wall, making that awful cricket call without speaking. It was enough to push me back. "Dugan, cut out. This isn't funny. Go home, or I'll..." His imitation stopped the moment my motion lamp snapped on. For a second, the only sound was the hum of the bulb, and then the chorus of insect noises swelling all around us. Then I saw them. Dozens of little white lights across the street, blinking in pairs, each attached to a shadowy silhouette in the ditch and under the trees. Grillity Oval, our perfect neighborhood. The chirping went deafening as emotion, light, dimmed to conserve power. Junk, I thought. I heard the sound of an engine starting up. Then my neighbor's house lit up from the inside. His generator. Dugan lunged from the corner of my eye. He came at me with wet, ragged breaths, half cry, half growl, trying to bite, his teeth clacking against each other with each empty bite of his maw. I shoved him out of the grapple, and my boot connected with his chest. At that instant, there was a sharp metallic click, the sound of gun being racked, and then a single, thunderous boom. Warm wetness splattered across my face and neck. Pause. I looked up and saw it. Dugan, or what used to be Dugan, his shoulder and half his neck blown away, flesh twitching and writhing where bone should have been. Curtis fired again. The shot tore through his hip, spinning him down into grass. And then it split. The Dugan thing's back opened like a zipper, straight from the scalp down past his collar. A membrane bulge, wet and glistening, sliding out from the bottom of the skull, pushing out through the muscles and tendons of his neck. 6 noodle-thin tentacles unfurled from his spine. The thing inside slithered free, using its appendages to fling through the grass toward the back of the house before leaping into the bushes, leaving behind what was once my daughter's crush. Gunfire roared. I snapped my head up trying to find a bearing on what was going on. Curtis was on his porch, shotgun booming in a steady rhythm, cutting down silhouettes charging from across the street. The air was filled with a symphony of insect noise, shrill and deafening. Then Curtis flipped on his porch light. Not yellow, not white. A violet glow swept across his yard like a comb. Under it, the things froze, their forms jerking in confusion. Curtis reached to his porch posts, unhooking the hoops that held the lanterns. The nylon line snapped free, and the lanterns dropped, shattering against the stone pavers. The many explosions lit the yard like flashbangs. Fire bloomed in the thigh-high weeds, and 5 of our neighbors ignited at once, shrieking, flailing. I wanted to cheer. For one insane moment, I thought he might actually win. Just an old man, alone on his porch, holding off the entire neighborhood with fire and a shotgun. It was suicidal. It was impossible. And yet, for a heartbeat, I believed. But it didn't last. The gunfire, the insect drone, the flames, it all cut out at once. His porch light died. The generator sputtered into silence. In the red glow of burning weeds, I saw them swarming, shapes skittering through my yard, shadows pouring up from Curtis's backyard, where the generator had been. Mr. Rain, the man who always bragged about his lawn, rushed Curtis. A shot cracked, and Rain's chest blew open, his ribs exploding out his back. Curtis reloaded with inhuman speed. A shell clamped between his fingers until something snagged him. A pale arm hooked his left shoulder and yanked. His arm tore out of the socket with a wet pop, twisting grotesquely behind him. Curtis didn't falter. Down to one knee, he slammed the butt of the shotgun onto his thigh, racked it one-handed, jammed his thumb against the trigger. The last shot went off the same second with a lunge from the other side. The buckshot turned Will's head into a spray of cartilage and brain. But Will's momentum carried through. His open hand smacked Curtis across the face. When Curtis hit the ground, his head was rotated nearly 2/3 the wrong way. And just like that, the good neighbor was gone. Only moments passed before I realized every remaining pair of eyes were laser focused on me. Some were in the street, some in yards, all of them frozen. I took a step back toward the porch. They stepped, I sped up. They matched my pace. I turned and bolted. The raspy, insectal chorus was joined by the thunder of feet. Stomps on pavement, boots tearing through grass. I slammed the door and latched it. For a second there was nothing. Then the first heavy body hit with a gut-punch thud. I had to get Jules and the kids. I had to save them. But as I passed the island, I stopped. The envelope sat where I'd left it. This time the words landed. Suffer not the parasite to breed. Burn its harvest. I understood. I understood too late. I flipped on every gas burner in the kitchen onto high. All 10 and pivoted. A dark crimson glow carried itself down the stairs, painting the house like an omen. Each entrance shuddered under pounding hands. But not a peep from my family. I hit the stairs. The slams from down the steps becoming a constant metallic drum. I burst into Jackson's room. Empty. Gabby's room next. Empty. The master. I threw the door wide and froze. Julia was not herself. Held down by a raspy humming Gabby and Jackson. Her body was folded like paper in ways a human frame should not permit. Legs curled up and over her shoulders. Feet planted at the sides of her head. Arms splayed and twitching, mouth gaping. Her eyes had rolled back. The sounds coming from her throat were wet, croaking, not the scream I expected, but something that sank into my teeth. For a terrible moment, I watched the top of her skull seam pull. The scalp puckered as if the backside just finished cinching back up. Her eyes rolled forward and met mine. A wet, gurgling hiss escaped her lips. Bone cracking and the sick sound of joints popping filled the room as her back uncurled, creaking like a broken hinge, slowly swinging. I reached for the knob and slammed the door shut. Something inside slammed back too. Braced with my back against the door, my hand still on the knob, my heartbeat pitched upwards, a sharp anxiety filling my chest. Under the circumstances, it was absurd that I could control my breathing, but with the realization that my family had been ripped open and infected with those things, my motor functions began to fail me. Another slam against the door, the sound of it splintering. I let go of the handle and broke for the steps. Before I got to the end of the hallway, Jackson burst through the door, crashing into a wall, and corrected himself against the opposite one on the bounce back, shambling like a marionette toward me. Gabby followed, vibrations cooing from her throat, clutching at the warped wrist of her mother. For a moment, it was a collective, slow shuffle, but as soon as I took the final staggering shuffle to the stairs, the flip switched. Under the smell of gas, I bolted down the stairs, Jackson and Gabby pinballing off the walls behind me, their little feet drumming the hall. The back sliding door shattered as I rounded the corner railing, entering the kitchen. 10 bodies poured through the breach, sliding and lunging across broken glass, collided with my family as they rounded the stairwell railing after me. I collided with the corner wall that conjunct our living room and the kitchen, rolling off of it with the slightest glance over to my pursuers as I tumbled backwards over our sofa in the dark. The bay windows in the living and dining rooms exploded inward. Light and silhouette spilled through, pouring onto the floor. I scrambled on all fours toward the basement door. Out of the corner of my eye, a glow rose in the foyer. One of the neighbors was on fire, staggering across the porch, trailing flames like a torch. Another, its upper body already burning. Leapt to the dining room window, the carpet blackening under its feet. Curtis's fire had been taking its time. Milliseconds later, I was yanking the basement door shut behind me, latching it and pressing my back to it, lungs burning like I'd sprinted across the county. I braced for the impact on the other side that would send me tumbling down the stairwell. Buzzing, darkness, panic, and then I realized they weren't falling as hard as I thought. The ones at the front were more distraction than danger. The cellar door was solid oak, sturdy, but not unbreakable. A body slammed against it. At the same moment, something upstairs ignited. The roar of a flash fire rolled through the house. Screeching followed, feral and high-pitched, animals flailing in flame, sizzling, popping, then the screams. Human screams. Heat pressed against the door. The thing outside stopped shoving. Its last push ended in a wet, sliding sound of meat cooking against the wood, slumping down the other side. I wasn't safe. The door was already glowing at the edges. I didn't know how many were still outside, but I had to get out, fast, before the fire spread downstairs, before the air turned to nothing. I fumbled with a handrail and rushed into the dark basement, heart jackhammering through my pec. One of the small rectangular windows under the back deck was my only shot. I clawed at the latch, ripped at the cheap hinges. Screams upstairs bled into monstrous roars. Finally, the hinges gave out. Getting through was another nightmare. I dragged a foldable table beneath the window, climbed onto it, and shoved my left arm out first, head pressed to my left shoulder, right arm twisted behind me, across my back, fingers wrapping my left hip, trying to narrow myself enough to fit. I jumped, toes shoving off the wobbling table. It clattered out from under me as the deck above caught fire. Heat pressed down on my neck, giving the feeling that it was splitting, then a patch of darkness that I can't remember. No more than 5 seconds, as if I blacked out. When I opened my eyes, I clawed forward with one hand, legs splayed against the wall, whimpering as I thrashed. My fingers found a deck post, and I pulled. My right shoulder popped with a sickening crackle of styrofoam tearing. Pain slowed me, but I persisted until my right shoulder crammed through. Once my upper body crested through frame, I flung my injured right arm ahead of me, and grabbing the post with both hands, dragged the rest of me out. Flames hissed overhead. Shapes stumbled onto the deck, their silhouettes warped by firelight. I crawled to the edge of the deck, keeping my head as low as possible beneath the inferno, pushing to the shrubbery and into the cold night air. Every instinct screamed for me to go back into the burning house just for cover. Instead, I hugged the tree-line, shambled to the shed. Moonlight turned everything silver, and I stayed in the shadows as scorched bodies wandered aimlessly around the house before succumbing to their damage. I crouched, spun the combination lock, and slid inside. The shed smelled like oil and old grass clippings. I latched the flimsy pin locks, knowing they'd stop nothing. Still, I pulled a tarp over myself and slumped behind the lawnmower. And that's where I've been, for 9 hours, typing this. From time to time, I peeked through the tiny window. No fire trucks ever came. Curtis's house and mine are gone, collapsed into blackened ash. But the bodies are gone too. Not on their own. At 5 a.m., the neighbors who didn't burn came out from their hypnosis and walked home without saying a thing. Some without shoes, some without their spouses or children. Shortly after, 2 unmarked trucks pulled up. Men in coveralls packed the corpses, loaded them into the backs of the box trucks, and drove away. By 6, dumpsters arrived. A cleanup crew is still out there, scooping the scraps of our homes into steel bins. And 10 minutes ago, my phone buzzed. BZZ, a job position you recently applied for has opened up again. Would you like to reapply? Product Lifecycle Analyst, Narrated. Story 3. Peeping Tom. Jail really sucks. I just got out, they released me. But I still have to stand trial, and that moment in court was just the arraignment. I didn't know what that meant until I was standing there in court, hands cold, Try not to look at anyone. The prosecutor read out the charge. Voyeurism in the first degree. It sounded worse than I'd imagined, like I was some kind of predator. I wanted to explain, to say it wasn't like that, but my lawyer told me to stay quiet. The judge asked if I understood the charge. I said, yes. Then they talked about bail, and my lawyer argued for release on recognizance. Said I wasn't a flight risk, that I'd lived in the same building for 12 years, that I had no priors. He didn't mention that I was the landlord. I think he was trying to protect me. The prosecutor did mention it. Said the victim lived in my building, that I had access, that I'd violated trust. I felt my stomach drop. I didn't look at her. I didn't look at anyone. The judge agreed to release me, but with conditions. I'm not allowed within 50 feet of her unit. I had to hand over all keys. I'm barred from entering the east stairwell, the laundry room, and the basement, or anywhere she might be. I wear an ankle monitor now. It buzzes if I cross the invisible lines they drew around her space. I have to pay $20 per day to wear this thing, and I'll have to wear it until the trial. My lawyer says that, considering the circumstances, I'll probably have a reduced sentence if they even find me guilty of anything. This is my chance to explain myself, to clear my good name. I just read what I wrote below, and it sounds crazy, but I swear it is all true. That thing really exists, and it is still out there. My first encounter with a hair clog was, well, as a clog, like in the drain. I snaked it out for Mrs. Peachtree, and there it was. I stared at it for a moment, somehow sensing it was staring back at me. I shuddered, feeling the wrongness of it. The clog dangled from the end of the wire's hook, looking almost like a wig of long dark hair. It had all kinds of globules of slime and white fuzz and twisted tangles, and it was dripping tea-colored liquid. The odor was appalling, and I gagged on it, and it slipped from the hook. I retched into the toilet next to me while the matted thing plopped back into the tub. There it slid, no, slithered, yes, it slithered, into the drain and easily went in and vanished. I was dumbfounded, and I poured more drain cleaner in. I tried to fish it out with the wire, feeling around for it, but it seemed it had gone down the drain. Everything okay in here, Mr. Thomas? Mrs. Peachtree asked. I shivered, feeling the first moment of fear from that first encounter. I nodded, but I felt weird. I've never seen anything like that, and I don't believe in weird stuff. Later on that day, Mrs. Peachtree's daughter, Ruth, came to visit her mother. I've met Ruth before. She used to come spend the summer with her mom. She's all grown up now. Actually, I realize I shouldn't comment on her appearance, considering I now have this unfair reputation as some kind of pervert. I assure you, I'm not like that, really, I'm not. Ruth came running down the hallway, screaming in bloody terror. When I caught her, she hit me and then, wild-eyed, shrieked hysterical, "She's dead." There was this odd way she said the word dead, like she'd never said the word before in her life. Not like that she hadn't. I went and looked, after handing Ruth over to Caroline, my same alleged voyeurism victim. She'd opened her door wearing a towel, and yes, I glanced at her and she frowned at me, but I didn't intentionally notice anything. She was wearing a too small of a towel, and when I turned she was standing there. I didn't look at her on purpose. Nevertheless, I could tell by the look in her eyes that she was offended by my gaze, because I did look up and meet her eyes. After she had Ruth with her, sobbing and shaking, I went to go check on Mrs. Peachtree. The retired elementary school teacher was dead and lying sprawled outside her shower, where she'd fallen face first. I thought she died accidentally, so I covered her up before anyone else saw her like that, throwing some towels over her, but I'd sort of averted my gaze until I got the towels over her, and then I took a closer look and reached down to check her pulse on her neck. That is when I noticed the indented flesh of her throat, like someone had hanged her and then removed the rope, leaving only the marks. My fingers came away from her neck with a long string of slimy mucus, and it smelled of Drano, and that horrible smell from that clog I'd pulled out. For a moment, I just sat there in shock and horror. Then I felt it, the utter dread of some malevolent thing watching you. I turned and looked, my face and eyes darting around until I looked up in the corner of the shower behind me. It was there. It looked like a foul, inky cobweb. It had tendrils of its hair spread out in all directions, holding its position through tension and stickiness. I felt terrified because what was that thing? What was that? Then it dropped into the tub with a sick wet sound, and it wriggled and moved the drain. I screamed in panic, tried to move myself away from it, and landing atop Mrs. Peachtree. As I struggled to get off her, all the towels fell away and my hands were slipping over her wet skin as I tried to climb to my feet to get away from whatever that thing was. At that moment, Caroline had entered, and she only saw me all over Mrs. Peachtree, scrambling to get to my feet. "Did you see that?" I asked, my face red and sweaty. "Get off of her, you sick weirdo." Caroline snarled at me. "She's dead," I pled, as though death took priority over whatever she was freaking out about. She backed away from me, now wearing a bathrobe. "You're gross." She spat. Someone in the hallway had called for paramedics, but I am pretty sure she was all the way dead already. They wheeled her out, and Ruth was devastated. I felt awful for the poor girl. I'd seen her grow up. I knew her and her mother. Seeing her that way broke my heart. The next day, Caroline called me because her drain was clogged. I went to her apartment, and she was glaring at me, but she said, "I didn't mean to yell at you." I was shocked. "It's all right. I realized that you must have seen me tumbling over her." I took a fright when I realized she was dead. I kept saying realized, but for some reason I'd slur it twice and said realize both times. Caroline blinked, and I guess that was a Freudian slip because I really felt like the look in her eyes was sincere. At that moment, she was seeing me for who I am and not the creepo she thinks I am now. I started by plunging the drain in her tub because it was completely blocked. I felt some trepidation as I worried that thing was still moving to the pipes, searching for another victim to strangle. For an agonizing amount of time, I worried and felt anxiety that it would burst out of the drain and wrap around my face. I kept working, but the fear was real. I managed to get her drain unclogged, and she said it was good because she was going to be late and she didn't get a shower and go. Suddenly, she started screaming in total panic. I flung open the door, but there was no hair monster attacking her. Instead, she was completely exposed and pointing at me with a mixture of terror and rage in her screams. I backed away, and the bathroom door shut and locked. She was screaming at me to get out of her apartment, and I did. I went home to my place. There I sat and waited. It wasn't long until the police arrived. Now I don't know what to do. I can't protect anyone with the monitoring. I've heard that in the adjacent buildings, there were 2 more deaths by strangulation or murder. The police have no leads. 6 more weeks, and I will be free from the monitoring and the trial. I have stockpiled drain cleaners, plumber snake, drain auger, and motorized roto-rooter. I am going to hunt that thing down, clear my name, and avenge Mrs. Peachtree. I'm still terrified of that thing, but I'm taking my terror, and I am going to fight back and earn my freedom. Story 4. Something is wrong with my tenant. I've seen dead bodies before. I know what they're supposed to look like, even smell like, but this just wasn't right. I saw my first body when I was maybe 7 years old. It's not as morbid as it sounds. I promise. I was attending my uncle's funeral, an open casket event scene as he died of a heart attack. It was probably 1978. I remember straining on my tiptoes to get a look at my once living uncle. I remember having a hard time getting a look over his huge belly. I had remembered it being that big when he was alive. When you're that young, you see a lot of people's bellies. I found it odd how swollen it seemed, practically bursting out his black suit. When I got a look at his face, my first thought was, it's the wrong body. When a body has been embalmed, it looks different. Funeral technology wasn't quite as good as it is these days, and it showed. His face was waxy, but he looked peaceful. My uncle was dead, but it was hard to connect the man I knew to this immobile thing sitting in a crate. The second time I saw a body was about 20 years later. My biological father passed away and left me a building in his will. It wasn't his body I saw. Mind you, I was never super close to my father. I saw him every week for years, but we never really clicked We felt more like siblings and father and daughter. When he passed, I couldn't find myself incredibly sad. Call me cold, but that's the truth. I was excited to see the property he left me. When I drove to the house on Hilltop Road, I found a two-story manor that had been divided into flats. I hadn't known that my father had been a landlord. The building was old, not very old, but old for a house. It had certain accents that made it seem much older, but was in all right condition. Its outside was a little battered, peeling paint and ticketing gutters, but I was confident I could fix her up. Angela was my first tenant. She was 70 when she moved in and was a picture of sweet old lady. She and her dog Bruce, a brown basset hound whose long ears dragged on the ground, moved into a unit on the ground. The two of them were an odd couple, but very good tenants. From the moment I took her on, I knew Angie would die here. She seemed to know it too. She had no children, no husband, once confessing to me under the cover of some sherry that she was a lesbian from the time when that wasn't cool. I told her I thought she was very cool. At the time, it was just me and her filling that dusty building, so we got to know each other rather well. I made a habit of checking on her every day. She was, well, old, so there were times when she was forgetful. I'd pop by every morning to make sure she had taken her meds and fed Bruce. We would chat over a cuppa, and she'd reminisce about the disco. At some point, it got rather bad. She wouldn't remember taking her medication, and I'd have to convince her that I saw her take it. Once I'd seen her try and give her meds to Bruce, which was an interesting morning. It became clear that she was winding down. Bruce seemed to know it too, looking up at me with his sad eyes. I checked him one morning, knocking softly to no answer. I knocked again, still nothing. I knew, but I still got out my key and locked her door. There she was, slumped on the floral sofa. Bruce sat next to her, resting his head on her lap. She didn't really look dead, just still. Her cheeks were no longer rosy, but I could have sworn she was just sleeping. She was gone, though. I ended up moving into her flat. Bruce couldn't bear to part with the place, and I couldn't part with Bruce. After that, I cycled through tenants for the next 20 years until last year. I rented the flat above mine to a young lady named Raina Dabrowski. When we met, she introduced herself as Ray and shook my hand with an infectious smile. She was young, 22 when she moved in. I found it odd that she wasn't in uni, but I really shouldn't judge. Her path was her own, and it was none of my business as long as she paid rent. She was a rather good tenant. She left at around 9 in the morning every day and stayed out until 9 at night. I assumed she had some kind of customer service job because she left dressed in nice pants and blouses, blonde bob cut straightened into a perfect bulb. I knew all this because after I got the new tenants, I decided to install some more modern security measures. Both of them lived on the second floor. So I bought a camera that nestled nicely into the corner overlooking the intersection where both the rooms' doors stood. I could access the feed on my home computer, and checking it became muscle memory for whenever I was bored. I worked from home. You see, I wasn't just a landlord. It was routine for me to check the cameras every morning after breakfast, where I'd catch Ray locking up and greeting her neighbor whose name I can't quite recall. I had no problems with Ray living above me. She was very quiet when she was in the house. I guess she passed time by reading, though that might be because she dressed like a middle-aged librarian. There was one time where she had to knock on my door and mutter through her embarrassment that she had knocked a hole in the wall when swatting a spider. Other than that, she was lovely. I'm not sure exactly when the change happened. When I went to check the cameras, I'd see that she wasn't dressed for work or just popping her head out of her door before retreating back inside. I found it a little odd, but she might have just been an odd person. There was a point where I was upstairs for a reason I can't remember. Ray opened her door. Just a crack, really. Just enough for the hallway light to show her sickly features. She looked bad. Really bad. Her skin was pale and shiny. Her lips were cracked bluish, and her well-kept bob was grown out and greasy. Brown peeked out from the roots, and it hung in a stringy attempt at curls. She squeaked and shut the door quickly. That was odd enough, but it wasn't until later that week that I realized she hadn't exited the flat in days. I know it seems like spying to watch for her on the cameras, but I really had the best intentions. At first, I thought rather deftly that she was taking a staycation. She was a bit of a workaholic. So I thought maybe she finally was taking a break. My memory drifted to that odd encounter on the stairwell. She hadn't looked well at all. Maybe she was staying home to rest her sickness away. Yes, that must have been it. It was then that I worked up the courage to go check on her. I didn't have as close of a relationship with these tenants as I had had with Angie, but I didn't want to neglect them. And Ray seemed to be in a bad way. So I walked up to her door and gave it a knock. There was no response. About 30 seconds later, I knocked again. I was about to knock a third time when I noticed the state of the door. There was some sort of liquid turning the bottom portion darker. It wasn't water, it was too dark, but my landlord instincts kicked in, and I assumed we had a leak. I knocked harder and called out to her. No response. I admit this was stupid, but I'm not sure if it would have changed anything. I decided to give it a day. God damn it. Why on earth did I give it a day? I don't remember drinking that night, but I must have passed out on the sofa, because I awoke slouched there with Bruce Jr. draping his long ears over my lap. It was dark in the room. The shades had been pulled to prevent being woken by the morning light, by a single streak of it cast onto the far wall where the television was set up. I could hardly make it out, but there was something on the wall behind the telly. I thought maybe wires, but the plug was low to the floor. Something was making a vertical line down the wall, just barely illuminated by the sun. Bruce Jr. whined when I got up to flick the lights. The light revealed a large dark drip, and it was growing fast. The stain was brownish red and slipped down the wall with a disgusting unhurriedness. It was thick and slow and gross. I'm not stupid. I knew it was blood, but it just wasn't right. It was too thick, too sticky. The smell began to permeate my flat, sickly sweet and metallic, like spoiled molasses. I went up to Ray's flat. This time the door collapsed when I knocked, folding like a wet playing card. The lights were off, but Ray had left the window over the sink's shades open. The beautiful sunrise spread over her body, like a blanket. She was sat against the wall, legs splayed out like she had fallen, neck bent lifelessly to the side. Her hands were palm up on the cold tile floor, and I realized sickening that she was surrounded by a pool of dark, rotting blood. I don't know why the appearance of her corpse is burned so clearly in my memory, why my uncle or Angie, both who I loved dearly, only stayed in there fleetingly, I don't know. Raina Dabrowski was dead and rotting, seeping her fluids all over my renovated kitchen floor. The cheeks and eyes were sunken and discolored with what looked like bruising. Thing was, the bruising had an odd texture that caught to like. The bruises formed rings like circles of mold on an orange. That was it. There was mold covering her body, making colorful patches on exposed skin like some spoiled imitation of clown paint. Yellow-green lines paved into her skin, making sickeningly intricate designs. Brownish drool hung from her lips, staining the soft jumper she had on. Bodies are not meant to look like that. I know. She had been dead maximum days, but it couldn't have happened that fast. It was like she rotted while alive. I was just about to reach in my pocket to phone the police when her decomposing lungs wheezed out a breath of air. I startled so hard I dropped my phone, and it hit the blood with a wet smack. It didn't splash like liquid should, it was too thick. Her body let out this horrible gurgle, and she lurched forward. Her unblinking dead eyes rolled to look at me. Her normally blue irises were milky pale, and her pupils might have well been gone. I think she was trying to say something, so against my better instincts, I tried to listen. All I could make out was, "Sorry about the mess." Story 5. Never let your children meet their imaginary friends in person. Never. It was the last week of summer. That I knew. We all knew it. We all felt it. The kids in town would go to bed each night tossing and turning, knowing they'd soon be fighting for that extra 15 minutes of sleep. Soon, we'd no longer be waking up to the sun gleaming in our eyes, but instead a cacophony of alarms tearing our dreams in half. Back to early mornings and tyrant teachers sucking the lives out of our poor, captive souls. What I didn't know was that final week of summer would be the last time I'd ever see my friends that I had never even met. Kevin and Jordy were my best friends, my brothers. They were in my life for as long as I could remember. Kevin was a year older than me, and Jordy was a year younger. Our bond was nearly that of twins, or triplets for that matter. We were there to witness each other's first steps, words, laughs, everything. Even before the universe could switch on my consciousness, it was like they were always by my side, floating in some eternal void I could never make sense of. From what I can remember, my childhood was normal. I was well fed. My parents told me stories at night. They loved me enough to kiss my wounds when I took a spill. I got into trouble, but not too much trouble. My bed stayed dry most of the time. Things were good. It wasn't until I was about 9 when my normalcy came into question. Our son is going to grow up to be a freak. I bet the Smithson's boy doesn't go to his room and sit in total silence all day and night. It's not his fault. I'm a terrible father. If he grows up to be the weird kid, we are going to be known as the weird parents. The boy needs help. My father's voice could reach the back of an auditorium. So down the hall and to the left was no chore for his booming words when they came passing to my bedroom door and into my little ears. From outside looking in, sure, I was the weird kid. How could I not be? It's perfectly normal for an only child to have a couple of cute and precious imaginary friends when they are a toddler. But that cutesy feeling turns into an acid climbing up the back of a parent's throat when their child is approaching double digits. Dad did his damnedest to get me involved in sports, scouts, things that moved fast or sounded fast, things that would get me hurt in all the right ways. Mom, well, she was Mom. I was her baby boy, and no matter how strange and off-kilter I might have been, I was her strange and off-kilter boy. As I settled into my preteen years, the cutesy act ended in Act 2, or the boy, get out of your room and get your ass outside, act began. For years I had tried explaining to my parents and everyone around me that Kevin and Jordy were real, but nobody believed me. Whatever grief my parents gave me was multiplied tenfold by the kids at school. By that time, any boy in his right mind would have dropped the act and made an effort to adjust, but not me. The hell I caught was worth it. I knew they were real. Kevin and Jordy knew things I didn't. I remember the math test hanging on our fridge. A+. I'm so proud of you, my mom said. Looks like we have a little Einstein in the house. Nope, wasn't me. That was all Kevin. I'm not one to condone cheating. But if you were born with a gift like us three shared, you'd use it too. The night before that test, I was in the clubhouse with the boys. At least, that's what we called it. Our clubhouse wasn't built with splintered boards and rusty nails, but with imagination stitched together with scraps of wonder and dream stuff. It was our own kingdom, a fortress perched on top of scenery of our choosing, with rope ladders dangling in winds only we could feel. No rules, no boundaries, just an infinite cosmic playground that we could call our own. It was a place that collectively existed inside our minds, a place we barely understood but hardly questioned. Kevin was soaring through the air on a giant hawk/lion/zebra thing he had made up himself. He had a sword in one hand and the neck of a dragon in the other. Jordy and I were holding down the fort. We had been trying to track down that son of a bitch for weeks. I heard my mom's heavy footsteps barreling toward my room. Somehow, she always knew. Guys, I said, I have to go. Mom is coming in hot. Seriously? Jordy wasn't happy. You're just going to leave us hanging like this, with the world at stake? Sorry, I said. It's 2 a.m. You know how my mom gets. Lucky you, said Kevin. My mom only barges, and when I'm sneaking a peek of Channel 46 at night. At least your mom knows you like girls, unlike Tommy's mom, said Jordy. Isn't that right, Tommy? The vicious vernacular, the barely prepubescent boy. The usual clubhouse talk. Kill or be killed. I wasn't up to fight. Next time. All right, that's enough for me, guys. I have a quiz in the morning, and it's already too late. Kevin, can you meet me in the clubhouse at 10 a.m.? You got it, said Kevin. I landed back in my bed just in time for my mom to think she saw me sleeping. I only say landed because leaving the clubhouse, a place buried so deep in my mind, felt like falling from the ground and onto the roof of an 80-story building. The next morning, I walked into Mrs. Van Bergen's math class. She had already had the quiz perfectly centered on each kid's desk. ruthless. She was in her 60s, and whatever joy she had for grooming the nation's youth into the leaders of tomorrow had gone up in smoke like the heaters she burned before and between all classes. As I sat at my desk, I watched each kid trudge on in with their heads hung low, but mine was hoisted high. I had a Kevin. As soon as all the kids sat down, I shut my eyes and climbed into the clubhouse. Like the great friend he was, Kevin was already waiting. Question by question, he not only gave me the answer, but gave a thorough explanation on how to solve each problem. He was the smartest kid I knew. Math? No problem. History? Only a calendar knew dates better than him. Any test he helped me take was bound to find its way to the sanctity of Mom's fridge. We were getting to the last few problems when Jordy decided to make an unwelcome appearance. Tommy? Kevin? Are you guys in there? Jordy yelled as he climbed the ladder. Guys, you have to check out this new song. I don't have time for this right now. I'm in the middle of... Jordy's round face peeked through the hatch. So, I'm driving to school with my mom today, and this song came over the radio. Fine Young Cannibals. You ever heard of them? No, I haven't. Seriously, though, Kevin is helping me with my... She drives me crazy. Jordy, can you please just... Like no one else. Jordy. My patience, which was usually deep, but quite shallow for Jordy, was used up. Jordy froze. I'll hear all about your song after school, I promise. We are getting through my math test. Academically, Jordy wasn't the brightest. Socially, too. To be honest, all of us were probably socially inept. Hell, we spent most of our free time inside our own heads and up in the clubhouse. Jordy had dangerous levels of wit and could turn anything into a joke. Although his comedic timing was perfect, the timing of his comedy was not. There were far too many times I'd be sitting in the back of class, zoning out and into the clubhouse, and Jordy would crack a joke that sent me into a violent fit of laughter. Needless to say, all the confused eyes in the physical world turned to me, and just like that, the saga of the strange kid continued. If I close my eyes tight, I can faintly hear the laughs from that summer reverberating through what's left of the clubhouse. It was the summer before 8th grade, and it began as the summer to remember. The smell of fresh-cut grass and gasoline danced through the air. The neighborhood kids rode their bikes from dusk until dawn, piling their aluminum steeds into yards of kids whose parents weren't home. They ran through yards that weren't theirs, playing tag, getting dirty and wearing holes in their jeans. Most importantly, they were creating bonds and forging memories that would last and continue to strengthen among those lucky enough to stick around for the remember wins and maybe grow old together. I participated in none of it. While all the other kids were fighting off melanoma, I was in the shadows of my room, working on making my already pale skin translucent. Although my room was a sunlight repellent, no place shined brighter than the clubhouse. As the boys and I inched towards that last week of summer, we laughed, we cried, we built fantastic dreamscapes, rich with stories and lore. We were truly flexing our powers within the endless walls of the clubhouse. But soon, the vibrant colors that painted the dreamscape would darken into unnerving shades of nightmares. Unless one of the boys was on their yearly vacation, it was abnormal for the clubhouse not to contain all three of us. Our gift, or burden, had some sort of proximity effect. The further one of us traveled from one another, the weaker the signal would become. But something wasn't adding up. Each week that went by, Kevin's presence became scarcer. He wasn't out of range. I could feel him nearby, sometimes stronger than usual. Kevin began going silent for days at a time, but his presence grew in a way that felt like warm breath traveling down the back of my neck. I didn't understand. By the time the last week of summer arrived, our power trio had turned into a dynamic duo. Don't get me wrong, I love Jordy, but I could only handle so many unsolicited facts about pop culture and his gross obsession with Belinda Carlisle. Even though I was mildly obsessed myself, the absence of Kevin felt like going to a dance party with a missing leg. It was Sunday evening, the night before the last time I'd ever see my friends. Jordy and I were playing Battleship. B6, I said. A rocket shot through the air and across the still waters. The explosion caused a wake that crashed into my artillery. Damn it, you sunk my battleship. Can you read my mind of something? Jordy was flustered. "No, you idiot," I said. "You literally always put a ship on the bureau every single time. You're too predictable." "I call bullshit. You're reading my mind." "How come I can't read your mind?" "Maybe you need an IQ above 20 to read minds." The bickering swept back and forth. Right before the bickering turned hostile, a welcome surprise showed itself. Kevin, Jordy, ecstatic, flew across the waters to give Kevin a hug. Kevin held him tight. "Where have you been?" I asked. Kevin just stared at me. His bottom lip began quivering as his eyes welled up. He kept taking deep breaths and tried to speak, but the hurt buried in his throat fought off his words. We all waited. With great effort, Kevin said, "I don't think I'll be able to see you guys anymore." The tears became contagious. My gut felt like it was disintegrating, and my knees convinced me they were supporting an additional 500 pounds. The light in the clubhouse was dimmed. What happened? What's going on? For the first time in my life, I saw sadness on Jordy's face. Kevin responded with silence. We waited. After some time, Kevin said, "It's my parents. All they've been doing is fighting. It never ends. All summer long. Yelling, screaming. I've been caught up in the middle of everything. That's why I haven't been around." Kevin went into details as we sat and listened. It was bad, really bad. The next thing he said opened the floodgates among the three of us. "I just came to tell you guys goodbye. I'm moving away." God, did we cry. We stood in a circle, with our arms around one another, and allowed each other to feel the terrible feelings in the air. Just like that, a brother had fallen. A part of us who made us who we were. A piece of our soul was leaving us. And it wasn't fair. We were supposed to start families together, grow old. Our entire future was getting stomped on and snuffed out. Kevin's head shot up. "I have an idea," he said. "What if we all meet up? Tomorrow night?" It was an idea that had been discussed in the past. Meeting up? Why not? We were all only a few towns apart. Each time the conversation came up, and plans were devised to stage some sort of setup to get our parents to coincidentally drop us off at the same place without explicitly saying, "Hey, can you drop me off so I can go meet my imaginary friends?" The idea would be dismissed and put to rest. It wasn't because we didn't want to meet one another in person. It was because... Meet up? What do you mean, meet up? Where? Jordy nearly looked offended. What about Orchard Park? It's basically right in the middle of our towns. We could each probably get there in an hour or so on our bikes. Maybe an hour and a half, said Kevin. Orchard Park is over 10 miles away. I haven't ridden my bike that far in my life. Tommy hardly even knows how to ride a bike. Jordy started raising his voice. "Shut up, Jordy. I wasn't in the mood for jabs." "No, you shut up, Tommy. We've been over this. I'm just not ready to meet up." "Why not?" I asked. "You're just going to let Kevin go off into the void? See you later? Good riddance." "I'm just not ready," said Jordy. "Not ready for what?" asked Kevin. Jordy paced in a tight circle. His fists were clenched. "Not ready for what, Jordy?" I asked. "I'm not ready to find out I'm a nutcase, all right? The clubhouse is literally the only thing I have in my life that makes me happy. I'm tormented every day at school by all the kids who think I'm some sort of freak. I'm not ready to find out that none of this is real and that I am, in fact, a total crazy person." The thought nearly collapsed my spine, as it did many times before. It was the only reason we had never met. Jordy's reasoning was valid. I also wasn't ready to find out I was living in some fantasy land, either. The thought of trading my bedroom for 4 padded white walls was my only hesitation. But there was no way. There was absolutely no way Jordy and Kevin weren't real. "Listen to me, Jordy," I said. "Think of all the times Kevin helped you with your schoolwork. Think of all the times he told you about something you had never seen before, and then you finally see it. I mean, come on. Think of all the times you came barging in here telling us about songs we've never heard before. Do you really think that's all pretend?" Jordy paused, deep in thought. Anger took over his eyes as he pointed at Kevin and me. "How about this? What if you two are the crazy ones? Huh? What if I'm just some made-up person inside of your head? How would that make you feel? Huh? Jordy began to whimper. You know what? It's a risk I'm willing to take, I said. If you think I'm going to take the chance on never seeing Kevin again, then you are crazy. And you know what? If I get to the park and you guys aren't there, then I'll check myself right into the loony bin with an ear-to-ear grin. But you know what else? I know that's not going to happen because I know you guys are real and what we have is special. Kevin, I said, I'm going. It was 11:30 p.m. the next night. I dropped into the clubhouse. Are you leaving right now? I asked. Sure I am, said Kevin. Remember, the bike trail winds up to the back of Orchard Park. We will meet right off the trail near the jungle gym. Sound good. Any word from Jordy? Not a thing. We had spent the previous evening devising a plan. Was it a good one? Probably not. It was a typical kid jumps out of bedroom window and sneaks out of the house operation. I didn't even know what I was going to tell my parents if I were to get caught, but it was the last thing on my mind. In the most literal sense possible, it was the moment of truth. The summer night was thick. I could nearly drink the moisture in the air during the day. The bike trails were a peaceful winding maze surrounded by nature, but the moon-blanched forest made for a much more sinister atmosphere. My pedals spun faster and faster with each howl I heard from behind the trees. In the shadows were creatures bred from imagination, desperately trying to come to life. Fear itself was chasing me from behind, and my little legs could hardly outpace it. I was making good time. I had never been so thirsty in my life. 10 miles seemed like such a small number, but the deep burning in my legs told me otherwise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It was my mantra. Keep the rhythm tight. You're almost there. I saw a clearing in the trees. I had reached Orchard Park. I nearly needed a cane when my feet hit the grass. My legs were fried, and the jungle gym was right up the hill. I used my last bit of energy and sprinted toward the top. Nobody was there. I checked my watch. I was early. God, I hoped I was just early. I rode fast. I had to be early. Surely, Kevin was coming. As I waited, I thought about what life would be like in a straitjacket. Were they hot? Itchy even? Was a padded room comfortable and quiet enough to sleep in? More thoughts like these crept up as each minute went by. A sound came from the woods. A silhouette emerged from the trees. Its eyes were trained on me. The shadow spoke. Tommy? Kevin. No, it's Jordy. Jordy. I sprinted down the hill. I couldn't believe it. I felt weightless. Our bodies collided into a hug. There he was, his whole pudgy self and round cheeks. It was Jordy in the flesh. He came. He actually came. This is total insanity, said Jordy. No, it's not. We aren't insane. With our hands joined, we jumped up and down in circles with smiles so big you'd think we had just discovered teeth. We aren't insane. We aren't insane. Tears of joy ran down our faces. The brothers had united. I'm not going to lie to you, said Jordy, wiping a mixture of snot and tears from his face. I was scared, really scared. This whole time, for my entire life, I truly thought I wasn't right. I thought I was crazy. And to see you're real, it's just... I grabbed Jordy. I know. The tears continued. I'm glad you came. Have you heard from Kevin? Asked Jordy. I'm sure he's on his way. Jordy and I sat on the grass and waited. It was surreal. I was sitting with one of my best friends that I had seen every day, yet had never seen before in my life. He looked just like he did in the clubhouse. In that moment, whatever trouble I could have possibly gotten into for sneaking out was worth every second of the experience. From right behind us, a deep, gravelly voice emerged. Hey guys. We both shuddered at the same time and seized up. We were busted. Nobody allowed in the park after dark, and we were caught red-handed. Once again, the adults came to ruin the fun. I'm sorry, I said to the man. We were just meeting up here. We're leaving now. No, guys, the voice said cheerfully. It's me, Kevin. I don't know how long my heart stopped before it started beating again, but any machine would have surely said I was legally dead. This wasn't the kid I played with in the clubhouse. This man towered over us. He was huge. What little light the night sky had to offer was blocked by his wide frame, casting a shadow over us. His stained shirt barely covered a protruding gut, and what little hair he had left on his head was fashioned into a bad comb-over, caked with grease. I can still smell his stench. This is incredible. You guys are actually real. You both look exactly like you do in the clubhouse. I'm so excited. Kevin took a step forward. Want to play a game or something? We took a step back. There were no words. Kevin took the back of his left hand and gently slid it across Jordy's cheek. Kevin's ring sparkled in the moonlight. God, Kevin said, you're just as cute in person as you are in the clubhouse. There were no words. Kevin opened his arms. Bring it in, boys. Let me get a little hug. I didn't know what was wider, my mouth or my eyes. Each muscle in my body was vibrating, not knowing which direction to guide my bones. Away was the only answer. Jordy's frozen posture made statues look like an action movie. Kevin grabbed Jordy by the back of the neck. Come on over here, you big goof. Give me a hug. Kevin looked at me. You too, Tommy. Get over here. Seriously. Jordy was in Kevin's massive, hairy arms. Fear radiated from his trembling body. There were no words. Come on, Tommy. Don't be rude. Get on in here. Is this how you treat your friends? Jordy began struggling. There were no words. Kevin's eyes and mine met. I could hear his breathing. The moment felt like eternity. With Jordy dangling from his strong arms, Kevin lunged at me like a rag doll. Jordy's feet dragged across the grass. Kevin's sweaty hands grabbed my wrist. I can still feel his slime. There were no words, only screams. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. In that moment, there was no thinking. The primal brain took over. I shook, I twisted, I turned, I shuddered, I kicked, I clawed. The moment my arm slid out of his wretched hand, I ran. The last thing I heard was Jordy scream. It was high-pitched. Desperation rushed my ears, its sound finding a permanent home in my spine. The wails continued until Kevin, with great force, slapped his thick hand over Jordy's mouth. I'd never hear Jordy's laughter again. I'd pedal my bike like I had never pedaled before. The breeze caught from my speed created a chill in the hot summer air. I pedaled all the way home. God, did I pedal. When I got back home, I sprinted into my parents' room, turning every light on along the way. They both sprung up in bed like the roof was caving in. I begged them to call the police. I pleaded in every way I could. Kevin isn't who he said he was. I said it over and over. He took Jordy. Jordy is gone. I told them everything. I told them Kevin was moving, and the thing we shared didn't work at distance. I told them I had snuck out to meet them. None of it registered. I was hysteric. To them, the game was over. The jig was up. My parents weren't having it. They refused to call the police. When I tried picking up the phone myself, my dad smacked me across the face. So hard, he knocked my cries to the next street over. There were no words. Enough is enough. It's time you grow up. I'm tired of this fantasy bullshit. We're taking you to a specialist tomorrow. I refuse to have a freak under my roof. They didn't believe me. The look in my mother's eyes told me I was no longer her little baby boy, her strange and off-kilter boy. She covered her eyes as my dad gave me the ass-whooping of a lifetime. I had no more tears left to cry. The clubhouse. I miss it mostly. I haven't truly been back in over 20 years. I don't even know if I remember how to do it. It's probably better that way. After that terrible night, I spent the next couple of days going back to the clubhouse, trying to find Jordy. I prayed for a sign of life, something, anything to tell me where he might be so I could save him. The only thing I caught were glimpses of the most egregious acts no man could commit, only monsters. I don't care to share the details. On the third day after Kevin took Jordy, my parents and I were on the couch watching TV when our show was interrupted by the local news. Jordy's face was plastered across the screen. His body was found in a shallow creek 20 miles outside of town. My parents' faces turned whiter than their eyes were wide. They looked at me, I couldn't tell if those were faces of disbelief or guilt. Maybe both. There were no words. Every once in a while, I muster up the courage and energy to walk alongside the clubhouse. I can't quite get in, but I can put my ear up to the door. I can still hear Kevin calling my name. Story 6. We aren't supposed to be here. Humanity is a stain on the universe, a blemish on an otherwise perfect configuration of shapes, colors, and life. We are capable of far more than we ever should have been, and we aren't the first. Every species that has reached this same level of self-evaluation, an inner monologue that wasn't supposed to has destroyed itself. I fear we are doomed to do the same. Consciousness is an idea that most of humanity knows so little about, but I and few others have seen the truth. We've seen what it is supposed to be used for. Humans use it the same way a porn addict uses the internet, for the worst and most self-serving purposes. In fact, the internet might be the best analogy to equate consciousness to. It is in fact a large field, invisible and constantly spouting outward from its sources like a fountain. I've witnessed consciousness's sources. You may already think me insane. Write me off as a lunatic in a field of similar crazies on this damn website. But if not, allow me to let you in on this little-known secret. I am something of a scientist, no Willem Dafoe, but definitely an archaeologist. By now, I'm sure you're wondering how a rock expert could come to know more about consciousness than the scientists who actually study the mind and brain. It started in Siberia. Funny enough, snowy and full of surprisingly friendly communists who welcomed me and my team with warm arms and even warmer stew. We were there to primarily explore the validity of biblical accuracy. That is to say, we were there to see if we can find any relics that may link to biblical stories and prove them as truth. Perhaps our exploration's goal to turn faith into truth is what led to our horrific findings. Perhaps our own hubris has, and always will be what leads us to the undesired truth. Regardless, it was in the large and mostly unexplored Siberian mountains that me and my team of 4 discovered a large pit, caked in snow. One of my men mentioned the possibility of it being linked to Benaiah's lion-slaying incident. As mentioned in the Bible, the story suggests that he chased a lion all the way to a large pit on a snowy day wherein he slayed said lion. At least that's the gist of it. Upon our arrival in the center of said pit, metal detectors and shovels in hand, we began to plummet down a large tube-like chute that the earth had formed of rock and sediment. We slid down this winding tube for what felt like an eternity, before landing on a soft formation within the largest cave I had ever seen. Luckily, the squishy texture upon which we had landed helped break our fall, as well as the very large amount of snow that had once filled the pit above. Why did I have to fall under the fat ass? One of my crew members asked as he was squished between the weight of one of my other, more heavy-set crew members and the squishy soft texture of the material below us. I refused to acknowledge him, however, becoming transfixed upon the texture of what lay just below our feet. I need a pic. We should sample this. I've never seen anything like it. I uttered to my cohorts as they all gathered themselves and collect equipment they had once been carrying but had become lost during our impossibly long fall. My plan was to stab at the material below my feet, which expanded for miles in every direction, to collect samples for study. The cave followed suit and left plenty of space between the ceiling and what lay below our feet. Escape from this situation was going to be difficult. Collecting samples of this material also became an impossibility, as I began to realize it was pulsing, breathing. It was alive. No, it was part of a living being. We seemed to be standing on the organ of a living organism, deep within the earth. Impossibly deep. As I made this realization is when one of my men began to freak the fuck out, clutching his skull like a bowling ball that was rolling fast toward the young loved one, as well as screaming. A terrifying screech that yanked me from my fixation on where we were and allowed me to offer him the attention he deserved, placing a hand on his shoulder as I pulled my flask from its pouch on my waist to offer to him. Water being our only solution to any affliction this far out in the mountains, let alone this deep in the earth's crust. He ignored all attempts to reach him and question him, clutching his own head like it was about to fall off as he flailed back and forth, even falling to his own knees as he ignored all attempts to comfort him. The rest of my crew and I were all dumbfounded. not only by our surroundings, but by this man's reaction to our entry. We need to get out of here now. One of my men said as looking me dead in the eyes. I had looked in his direction the moment he started to speak, hoping he would offer solutions to our current predicament. Upon realizing that I was the boss, the leader of this expedition, I began to reach clumsily for my radio to try and contact our external support at the edge of the Siberian mountain range. I must have maxed out my luck stat in character creation, because somehow, even though we were seemingly thousands of miles below the Earth's surface based on the length of our fall, my radio call went through. They heard every word. This is Team Armstrong. We need immediate deep cave evac. I repeat, deep cave evac. Do you read, Alamo? Copy, Armstrong. Alamo to the rescue. It was a reply so immediate that it shocked me. How was our signal carrying that far out to the surface when we were seemingly thousands, no, hundreds of thousands of miles below the surface? My thoughts strayed to how they would even get us out of the situation. Sure, we had trackers on us, but there is no way they tracked us far into the Earth. Our last known location at the surface of the pit. Maybe a few miles down, maybe, but not our current location. My thoughts were interrupted by the member of our team who had been flailing and struggling, now deciding to scream something. Something I will never forget. We aren't supposed to be here. In the moment I was worried he had realized something about the impossibly large cave system we found ourselves in. The impossibly squishy rock that sat below our feet. I now realized he was being sent messages about our state of mind. Our consciousness, the way that we as humans are able to think and feel. We were never supposed to be here, but in our current panic state, I decided to rush to his side, sitting down and wrapping my arms around him as he continued to clutch his skull and rock back and forth. The rest of my team scanned our surroundings for any sign of danger in our immediate area. It's going to be all right. Alamo is on the way. My words offered no comfort to the distressed and panicked team member who continued to rock to and fro as he clutched his own head. I could even hear him muttering small and almost silent words between his screams. Help. Forgive us. Please. I get it. Were all the words I could make out in his panic state as he spoke under his breath. Becoming increasingly curious about our surroundings, I couldn't help myself but to grab a pick off the ground and walk a small distance away from my crew before plunging it deep in the organ-like texture that rested below our feet. As soon as I did, my entire team and I could feel the reaction, a large and violent pulse that knocked us all off our feet, except for the panicked member of my team who had been on his knees for quite some time. He remained kneeling, but upon the pulse he decided to utter the following words. Can't you hear it? A collection of words that perplexed me. Hear what? There were no bats, critters, or any living beings besides us in this cave. Or so it seemed. It only took moments before I understood what he meant. Still laying down after being knocked to my feet, I began to hear something. Not a voice, not a sound. Or at least, not any sound I recognized from my 45 years on this earth so far. It was a constant drumming. Pitter-patter, 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 pitter-patter. Consonant, unstopping within my own head. No source of the noise to be found, for it was in our own heads. Everyone heard it. The worst part being that we all knew what it meant, what the drumming translated to. Get out. Leave here. Get out. Leave here. Was all we really heard in our own heads as the drumming became a constant annoyance considering mine and my team's urge to clutch our own heads in comfort, the same way the one member had before. I began to clutch at the small amount of fleshy rock that I had previously picked out before, the reason behind my own and the rest of the team's insanity. As I clutched in my hands, I heard voices and saw visions for enough time to fill the lifetime of 1 million people. Enough information that one single brain could never hold. Information about the formation of our universe, how it is but a single cell in a larger organism. The same way a single cell in our body contains many parts, but it is still a single part of a larger singular system. I received visions of the planets in our universe. These visions decided to zoom in instead of out, for which I'm grateful. According to these visions, every planet in our solar system is similar to that of a cell part, not an entire cell, but rather a part. The entire system being the whole cell to help make up the being. What kind of being? I don't know and I don't want to, like I said. I'm glad it zoomed and not out. I might have gone properly insane had it zoomed out. Each planet made up a single part of the cell, and we were toying with the core, the nucleus of the cell that gives us our consciousness, the thing that we manage to somehow leech onto like barnacles. The source of our consciousness is Earth itself, only it was never meant to give it to us. According to what me and my crew saw during our short fit deep in that cave, the way that we think and feel is very similar to the way that entire planets think and feel, the way that celestial bodies tend to think and feel. Lowly ants such as us were never meant to think and feel to this extent. Obviously, we made it out of that impossibly large, impossibly deep cave. Our rescue team Alamo discovered us after several hours and found us all in the same state that the one member of my team started off upon entering the cave, panicked and clutching our skulls while muttering almost silent apologies. I don't know how they got us out, or why they asked no questions about the very odd cave system we had found ourselves in, but we all knew what we had found. My team and I have barely spoken about it since. Hence why I'm here talking to you, hoping this post reaches enough people to let you all know one single thing. We aren't supposed to be here. Story 7. I work as a janitor in a school where all the kids are quiet. One day they all screamed. I hate when a place gets too quiet. Ever since I was little, I had always been this way according to my mother. Whenever I'd be just alone in my room, she would always hear either a clap or a small bucket of pencils being dropped on the floor. When I would go for a drive, I would always have either the radio on, or I would play music from one of my several playlists. I know no kid has ever dreamed of working as a janitor. That's one of the things that separated me from everyone else, is that I was the one that always wanted to do the odd jobs. If a teacher had asked me to help stay behind and clean up, I would. If a neighbor needed help cleaning leaves from their gutter, sign me up. Most people would call it as just a kind gesture, but in my head it was more so as keeping myself busy. One of the best feelings when doing odd jobs is knowing what's happened behind closed doors. You get to know the ins and outs. I don't remember when it actually started happening, but I do remember one specific instance that was off to me. At the 7th grade hallway, in our school 6 to 8 had their own section and different hallways. One of the students was shutting their locker after putting stuff in and leaving. I know what you're thinking. What's weird about a kid shutting a locker this poster already sounds crazy. It's the fact that there was no noise from when they were closing it. After a couple minutes, when the student left, I got out my keys and checked the locker. Sure enough, I heard the occasional squeak. Weird. I thought as I closed it back and continued doing my normal shift. The next couple days, after I overheard the English teacher and the librarian talking down the hall as I was mopping the floors. Have you noticed anything about the Macintosh twins lately? The English teacher asked. The librarian just shrugged. I find it a peaceful change of place, she said. You know how rowdy and loud those boys have always gotten. I guess they might have finally learned to grow up and stop annoying others. I knew of the twins that they were talking about. The Macintosh twins were your usual troublemakers, always disrupting the class with crude jokes and gestures. Teachers complained about them constantly. During the lunch period, I decided to go see for myself, as this was a rare occurrence. I walked by the cafeteria and looked in the door while letting other chatting students through. There they were. Both of them were sitting at one of the tables quietly. Neither of the boys were moving. Everyone else seemed to act like they just weren't there. What got me, though, was that they weren't eating like at all, just sitting there unmoved and unbothered. I swear I don't think I even saw them blink thinking back at it, but I'm probably right. I just shrugged it off, said I was overthinking. Then after a few more days, more and more kids started going silent. A substitute teacher complained to the principal one afternoon. I overheard them conversing outside the door, which wasn't hard since Principal Warren was a loud man even when he speaks normally. Mr. Warren, the substitute says, I think something's genuinely wrong with the students. Principal Warren chuckles. And what's wrong about them? Are we disrupting the class? Well, no. That's the thing. They are just silent almost in an eerie way. They would do the things I asked them, but most of them would just be unnerved and quiet. Their blank eyes just looking at me even creeps me out. The substitute's voice trembles. War and gruffs. If they aren't being pests, then don't bother me with this nonsense. Here, just take your pay and leave. After I stepped out of the way as the substitute left almost shocked, I was confused. Why are none of them concerned about this? Seems too odd just to be a rare occurrence, I thought to myself. As soon as I went to the back of the hallway, I jumped. One of our students, a boy, was inches behind me, was just staring at me. I almost had a heart attack as I went to calm myself down. Jesus, kid, you almost scared me, I said to him. The boy said nothing back, just kept staring at me with point-blank eyes. I was unnerved, almost like how the substitute felt. Just then the bell rang. As more students left the building, I made sure to watch the one that felt like having a staring contest with me. I saw him go up to a woman that I assumed was his mother. The point-blank expression suddenly turns to a happy one and hugs her, almost like going back to a everyday normal reaction to a kid coming home to their parents. As I look, every other kid seems to act like that as well. Even the McIntosh twins were roughhousing as they were outside. I was confused. Why are the kids silent inside the school, but not out? I left that day with more questions than answers. Then something even more strange happened. Next couple of weeks, the kids were back to how they were. All noise, no quiet. The staff was a little confused, but I think they were bummed out as well. At the staff meeting one week, there was questions. To ease the confusion, Principal Warren slowly calmed everyone down, saying that things will go back the way they were. The staff agreed with this, and so did I. Who knows? Maybe it was just kids being kids. I mean, none of us has ever seen anything this far, but we thought it was just a change of times and how it was probably a trend or prank that was viral on the internet. Weeks went by. We all slowly got the edge off as all of our kids got back to normal. I remember thinking the whole thing was funny, until one day, for some reason, every kid in the school got quiet as soon as they stepped through the doors. Just immediate silence, talking 1 second, and then just quick silence the next. Everyone on the staff froze in place. The kids instead just walked in, got their stuff, and silently went into class. You couldn't even hear their footsteps. We all watched at one point when a kid even tripped and fell, but you couldn't hear a thing from it. They just silently got up and walked on, not even brushing themselves off. Teachers struggled going through the day, said all the kids silently staring at them as they taught unnerved them so much they had to make a little bit of noise in the classroom. It was sad, because they were all becoming like me in a way. I dealt with this one time even by banging each locker as I went down a hallway. It's just like the sound was erased in our school building. Yesterday was the first time I actually snapped. While cleaning the science classroom, one of the kids was there by the doorway silently staring at me. I couldn't take it anymore as I was gripping my broom, so hard my knuckles turned white. I let go of the broom, letting it fall to the floor. Hearing the sound of it clanking on the ground was satisfying enough, but still didn't stop me from going to him. I grabbed the boy's shoulders and in an angry tone asked, "What the hell is going on?" Silence. The thing I dread the most is evident in the air. Then suddenly out of nowhere, the boy I was interrogating started screaming loudly. So loud that even I had to hold my ears as it screeched. Teachers that were near me came out of classrooms, also holding their ears, as I looked, and every single kid was yelling. You can see them sitting in their desk chairs patiently, but their mouths open to scream that takes forever. We got them all to quiet down after Principal Warren on the intercoms told everyone to go outside. Each kid got up still screaming and walked to the outside doors like a death march. As soon as one stepped outside, the yelling stopped. They all went back to normal. We would ask the kids eventually what was going on, but they would say they have no recollection of what took place. Warren made everyone leave early, then took me aside and berated me for causing the yelling. Now I'm here looking for answers, because I don't want to go back to a school that's always quiet. The first best option is to quit, but I need to know what's happening to these kids. Just please don't let it be quiet. Story 8. I met the slit-mouthed woman and became one of them. I thought Kukase Kana was just a Japanese urban legend, a ghost story, a meme. Last night, walking home from work, I saw her. She was under a flickering streetlight, tall, long black hair covering half her face, beige coat, white surgical mask. As I passed, she looked at me intensely and said, "Am I pretty?" I said yes, because what else do you say? Then she took off the mask. Her mouth was split ear to ear, teeth like broken glass. She asked again, "Even like this?" I panicked and said, "You're average." Her head twitched like a broken puppet. I ran. I don't remember how I got home. This morning, 3 deep gouges were carved into my front door, like giant scissors. I don't think she's done with me. Update. I didn't sleep last night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it. Snip, 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 like scissors being opened and closed. It would stop when I turned on the light, but start again when I tried to lie down. At 3:14 a.m. my phone buzzed. An unknown number sent me a single photo. My apartment door from the outside. The 3 gouges were deeper. I looked through the peephole. Nothing but an empty hallway. But when I turned away, I heard a soft voice right behind it. "Am I pretty?" I didn't open the door. I haven't slept since. It's worse. I left for work this morning and noticed something on my apartment door. A piece of paper taped to it. It said, in neat handwriting, "Even like this?" No one in my building saw who left it. All day at work, I heard faint scissors. My co-workers didn't hear a thing. On my way home tonight, she followed me. I saw her reflection in shop windows. She's faster now. When I got back, my bathroom mirror was cracked. The words, "Am I pretty?" scratched into glass from the inside. I think she's in my apartment. I tried burning sage. I tried praying. I even left an offering at the crossroads like some forum suggested. Nothing worked. At 2:59 a.m. tonight, my bedroom door creaked open by itself. I smelled iron, blood. I heard the scissors again, closer than ever. Then a whisper, "You can't run forever." I grabbed my phone and hid in the closet. I'm typing this from there right now. The scissors are right outside the door. Snip, snip, snip. I heard the scissors getting louder and louder. If she asks again, what do I say? If anyone knows, please tell me. I said out loud. I tried answering her. She whispered, "Am I pretty?" I whispered back, "You're beautiful." She opened the door. I can't see her face anymore. Everything is dark. My mouth burns. It feels open, too open. She's whispering to me now. She says I'm hers. She says I'll be pretty soon. If you see her, don't answer. Don't look. Don't smile. Don't give any reaction. Because if you do, you'll end up like me. Story 9. I need help, please. My mother died last month. A drunk driver, they said. What's more heart-wrenching was that she was on her way with my daughter Lucy's birthday cake. My daughter loved her Gammy's cake. Her first word was Gammy, which was something that my mother was extremely proud of. An exact replica of her grandma, everyone says. We were eagerly waiting for her arrival when the call came. A drunk truck driver. Head-on collision. She had flatlined on the way to the hospital. I hate that my daughter has to grow up with her birthday and her grandma's death anniversary being on the same day. Lucy cried for her granny every day. She wasn't the age to understand what death was yet, and sometimes even called out Gammy during her sleep. My father changed as well. He was a happy-go-lucky guy, but now it's like that person doesn't exist. The only times I've seen him smile is when he's with Lucy. I was coping, you could say. Well, if coping meant having breakdowns at least twice a week, it was my wife's idea to visit the family lake house. It's a place where a lot of happy memories about her exist. It'll also be a change of scenery, she said. I agreed. Maybe the change in scenery would help. Both of us work from home, so work was an issue. Convincing Dad to come with us was. He hadn't left their house after Mom's funeral. It took a lot of effort from my wife, Emma, and my side to get him to agree. Lucy was very fuzzy on the way to the lake house, so we had a grumpy toddler to handle when we reached the house. The lake house was the same as it always had been. The outside a polished redwood with glass accents. It was designed by my mom. Dad just stood there, simply looking at the house. You could almost feel his heart break. Emma ushered all of us inside and got started on dinner. I was in charge of unpacking. We were supposed to stay there for 3 weeks. Dad silently went to the downstairs master bedroom. Our room, mine and Emma's, was on the first floor. Lucy normally slept with us. Lucy also had a playroom on the same floor. We had to first clean up before letting her play in there, though. Dinner was a somber affair. Dad was silent. Mom's absence was just too much in this place that we built with her. Lucy did blabber enough for all of us, though. The first few days, all of us just stayed inside. On the 6th day, Dad suggested going down to the lake. I was surprised, to be honest. Laura would have wanted it. He smiled sadly. We spent late afternoon to late evening at the lakeside. Lucy had lots of fun. Dad actually smiled. I'm going to do the dishes. Give Lucy a bath? Emma asked after dinner. Sure, I replied and went upstairs. Lucy was in her playroom and laughing out loud. Hi, baby. I cooed at her. Gammy, 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 she giggled. The sadness came creeping back. Gammy's at a better place, love. Gammy, here. Yes, yes. She's watching over us right now. Lucy giggled and burrowed her head into my shoulder. Now, who's ready for a bath? I said while tickling her tummy. Bah! Bah! She wasn't able to pronounce her T's yet, so she had an adorable lisp now. At night, as Em and I were lying down with Lucy in between us, I told her how Lucy asked about my mom again. Em hugged me close. I promise it'll get better, she whispered. I hope it does. Play. Lucy said as soon as she woke up the next day. Play to her men playroom. After breakfast, young lady, Em said while waving her finger. No! Lucy screamed and began to cry. This was shocking, actually. Lucy was a happy child, and she didn't scream unless she was very frustrated. Maybe let her play for some time? She isn't usually so stubborn like this. You're gonna spoil her. Emma's frown was prominent. If I don't, who will? Emma just rolled her eyes. Lucy was in her playroom for most part of the day. She screamed and cried when we tried to take her out. What's with Lucy today? Dad asked at dinner. I don't know. She won't let us take her out of the playroom, I said with a frown. Maybe she's coming down with something? Kids usually get cranky when they're sick. Dad looked worried. I'll check her temperature when putting her to sleep, said Emma. That night Emma said something that left me feeling uneasy. Luca, I think your mother's here with us. I glared at her, asking if she thought saying such nonsense about my dead mother was a joke. You need to listen to me carefully, all right? Today, as I was going to get Lucy from playroom, I saw a silhouette leaning over her, and I swear to God, it looked like your mom. Just because you saw some shadow over Lucy, you think what? My mother's ghost is haunting us. I asked incredulously. It wasn't a shadow. I know it was your mother or something that looked like her. That's not all. I sometimes hear your mother's voice and know. Don't you dare say I'm crazy. Your dad's noticed it too. Why do you think his behaviors changed suddenly? I shook my head. You know what? I'm just going to go and sleep downstairs tonight. I don't think I have the energy to have this conversation with you now. You think I'm lying, don't you? Em had tears in her eyes. Darling, I don't know what to think. You're telling me my dead mother's ghost is haunting us. What would you do if you were in my shoes? I need to sleep on it for some time. We can have this conversation tomorrow, I promise. I gave her a quick kiss and went to the downstairs guest room. I woke up around 3 a.m. I'm a heavy sleeper, so it wasn't normal for me to wake up randomly at night. The silence of the night was broken by whispering which oddly sounded like my dad's. Maybe it was because of the ghost talk, but I decided to keep quiet and check it out. The whispers were coming from my parents' bedroom. Can you really come back to me? A life. Is there no other way? It was my dad's voice, all right. But who was he talking to? I slowly inched the door open. My dad was stood facing the wall behind the bed. Then I heard it. It's the only way. There was no mistaking it. It was my mother's voice. Slowly the wall began to morph. A ghostly figure, my mother, emerged from the walls, her pale hands touching my dad's cheek. A life for a life. That's the only way I can come back to you. The figure, my mother, said, and you need Lucy's? The more innocent the soul, the more effective it is. No, this wasn't real. Dad, I shouted. The figure looked up at me, and for a second, it was as if a mask slipped. I wasn't looking at the face of my mother. I was looking at something monstrous, something that was using the face of my mother to kill my child. Son, you need to listen to me. Your mother can come back. She just needs Lucy. You can have other kids later, right? I wasn't going to listen to this bullshit. I quickly ran out of the room and locked him inside. Luca, open the door right this instant. Dad banged on the door. I bolted up the stairs, running into my room, shaking him awake. Get Lucy, we're getting out. Right now? Maybe it was a frantic look in my eyes, or maybe it was the fear in my voice. Em took Lucy in her arms while I grabbed the car keys and our emergency bag. I was thankful that Em was an overthinker, which led to us having an emergency bag that consisted of our house keys, cards, money, and other necessities. We rushed down the stairs towards the front door. What about your dad? Em inquired. Just us three. She didn't question me further. We're currently at a motel a few hours outside town. Dad has been blowing up our phone. First, it was messages saying he's sorry and that nothing's going to happen, which then escalated to angry threats. Lucy woke up an hour ago. She's been asking where Gammy is. Emma has been very supportive. I don't know how I'd be doing right now if she wasn't with me. I know the thing I saw was not my mother, but I don't think my dad's going to believe that. The fact that he thought about killing Lucy. I don't think any of us are safe. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. There's this inhuman thing that's after my daughter's soul, and my own father wants to kill his granddaughter. Do I call the cops or should I call a priest? I don't think we can go back home. Please, someone help us. Story 10. My hometown feels off, and no one remembers me. I'm currently sitting in a dirty motel, and I don't know where I am. One minute I was in my hometown. The next I'm here in a void that is the Arizona desert. I was hoping someone could help me, or if they have experienced this. A couple weeks ago, I was at a gathering with some college friends who had gone separate ways since graduating 8 years ago. We were drinking and reminiscing about our glory days at university, and eventually began telling stories of our hometowns. Dan mentioned his time growing up in Boston. Terry got poetic about Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Amber in San Jose, and Joel somewhere outside Houston. When it got to me, I almost tripped over my words. For some reason, the name wasn't on the tip of my tongue. I really missed the Ray's Diner. The hills were always cool during the spring, and there's a really cool lake just outside of town. What town is it? Dan asked. I'm from Arizona. What's the name of the place? It's in between Sedona and Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. Dan let out a light laugh. The name? I felt like the words were stuck in my head somewhere. Is this the town that must not be names? Amber mused sarcastically. A few more people giggled. Dan started to look up Ray's Deli on his phone. There's a bunch of Ray's Delis, and none are in the area. I mean, it might have been called something else. Amber got a little more serious. Do you really not know the name of your own hometown, or are you just fucking with us? The amusement of my friends turned to mild concern when I opened my mouth and silence came out. Are you feeling okie? Amber asked. I need to think about this. Normally I just say the Sedona area. Most people aren't from there, so it normally suffices. To be honest, I don't think about the place that much anymore and never think of visiting. Really? Julie inquired. Okie, you should still know the name of your hometown. Amber laughed with concern. Do you? I looked around the room like the answer could be found on the walls or decor. I guess not. I uttered with a sense of confused disappointment. Interesting. I guess Rena's from nowhere, and has just been a figment of someone's imagination this whole time. Dan said as he giggled and took a sip of his beer, "Can you find it on a map?" "I think so." I took out my phone and begun searching maps for what I could recognize as my town. I saw nothing that looked familiar, and the party conveniently moved on. Later that night, some of Dan's local friends came over bringing the cheer, while I spent time in the background trying to text Callie, who up until I moved out, had been inseparable with since the age of 7. Callie was one of those people you'd meet and agree to see a movie you hated just for the chance to share some community gossip. That is how we became friends. She asked if I wanted to see Spy Kids, and even though the thought of the film made me want to scream, I offered to get my mom to drive us. Fast forward a few months, and it became weirder to see us apart than it was to be seen alone. We hung out at recess, took bathroom breaks during class together, hung out after school whenever free, and made an effort to join the same clubs until halfway through middle school when our age made it necessary to develop a personality outside each other. We drifted a bit after entering high school, but made an effort to chat online or via text and schedule day trips when possible. Despite our drift, we managed to remain close until our best friend streak ended with us going to separate colleges. We had one final night of celebration where we said we loved each other and we'd keep in touch. That was the last time I remember speaking with her. As I searched my phone, I couldn't help but wonder if this was a good way to break our silence after all these years. "Hey Cal, no, we haven't spoken in a decade, but what's the name of our hometown?" You know, the place we spent almost the first with decades of our life, half of which we spent together. What a way to let someone know you missed them. I couldn't find Callie's number and began to wonder if I deleted it after switching phones. I did a quick Facebook search, but Callie was nowhere to be found. I figured she might have deleted it like other people in my life who went on the social media exodus. I decided to wait till I got home and check the time capsule that is my old laptop. Once home, I did a deep search of my computer and found a folder titled August 7th that contained the photos of Callie and me by the lake. If it weren't for the shape of the lake, I wouldn't have recognized the picture, as they were so blown up and blotchy. You couldn't tell if you were looking at us or an advertisement for a modern art exhibit. Standing in the back left corner was a woman. She hadn't been affected by the degradation, but I didn't recognize her. Every pic I'd found in my hometown all looked like I'd put a magnet on the screen of a TV and made me or any of my friends distorted beyond recognition. The only thing you could see clearly was that same girl I didn't seem to remember. The girl was as alien to me as a stranger on the bus, yet I felt like I knew her. I dug through social media, looking up anyone I knew who grew up in town, but all the people I thought I knew and would see in passing, while browsing Facebook, turned out to be strangers. While searching the Facebook and Instagram profiles of people from my youth who I'd passed by without so much as a peek, I realized those people had been strangers this whole time. My friend Kevin from Woodshop turned out to be a random Kevin from Minnesota. It was the same with my friend Melissa from theater, Amanda from dance, and Wade from my English class. They were all strangers, and I couldn't find anybody I grew up with. It took me a while to find my mom's new number. She had changed it a few times since she moved out of our hometown, as she has what I like to call landline mentality. She changed her cell number when she moved because it felt like a real change, and holding on to an old phone number is like having an umbilical cord connect you back to your old town. She felt that having keepsakes of your past was like having a toxic pump sending old memories back into your body. She has always been a bit of a drifter. I found her number under Mom 3. I hadn't called either of my parents in about a year and a half, and I wasn't sure if this was the best use of family time. My mom answered after the 8th ring, which had to mean she's having a good time. "Hello, sweetie." I almost didn't recognize her voice. It was like she was tired on a grand scale. "Hi, Mom. How are you? How's life in the city?" "It's good." "Hey, I was wondering if you had any info on our hometown." The phone got silent for a few moments. "Mom." "Oh, sorry, honey. What about the town?" I wanted to know what was going on with our hometown. I can't remember a lot about it for some reason. You know, I don't remember too much about it either. Have you asked your old friends? I tried, but I can't find their info. Plus, the pictures on my computer were distorted for some reason. You know, it might be for the best. Why, it wouldn't be such a bad idea to talk to some of my old friends. The phone went dead. I tried calling her back, but I went straight to voicemail. My mom was weird, but I felt like I was talking to another person. I sent her a text. Hey, I think I lost you. I sat on the sofa for another 10 minutes, wondering why she was acting so paranoid about the town. I figured she was just sick and wasn't really paying attention, causing her to just say what she thought I'd like to hear. She used to be good at that. But the cracks started showing as I got older, and her answers started to sound more basic. I think I'm hanging with Matt on Friday. His parents bought a ping pong table. Oh, I heard those were dangerous. I got jolted by a text message from her. Fisher, Issa, O'Gate, and Garrison. I texted back. What does this mean? I didn't get anything back from her the rest of the night, and questioned whether or not I wanted to talk to her anyways. It wasn't like her to be cryptic, but figured I would play her game. I searched the names she gave me and found a number of unrelated sources of real estate agents, plumbers, social media posts, and other sites I'm unable to remember. My eyes fell on this news site with the article Local Deli Vandalized on Garrison Street. I froze when I saw the spot Cassie, and I would spend most of our free time in middle school. Wattenville. My hometown is named Wattenville. I left a week after the call with my mom. For whatever reason, she never turned her phone back on, and after a couple of days, I was unable to even leave a voicemail. I figured I'd just enjoy the drive home and get back to her another time. Driving on these old roads felt like a dream of summer days past blurring together into one giant day that became legendary only my friends and me. I passed the quaint welcome to Wattenville sign and was amazed at the town's ability to keep its identity after all these years. I pulled onto Garrison Street and got giddy over seeing all the shops of my youth. The ice cream shop was vibrant, the bookstore was busy, and all the fall decorations were in full swing. I found a local haunt where Callie and I would spend most of our free time eating food and avoiding our parents. I got out of my car and stared at the old sign that would let you know school was over and it was time to relax. I turned to look at the Wattenville entrance sign I passed in the distance, and it looked like it had rusted since I passed it a minute ago. I remember being surprised at how the sign appeared so brand new, considering it had been there for more than a decade. I chalked it up to good cosmetic paint and carried on to the deli. I burst into Ray's deli to see an old face behind the counter playing on his phone. Ray! He looked up at and tried to feign interest. Well, hi. How's it going? I miss this place. Has business been good? It's here and there. I apologize. Where did we meet again? A bit shocked, I proceeded to chive him. It's me, Rena. Okay, we used to hang here after school from 0609. Callie and me. Do you still see her? Ray had the look of someone going to gym against his will. I'm sorry. I see a lot of faces, and that was a long time ago. Do you still see anyone from that time come around? He looked at me like I asked him if he had seen Bigfoot in the air vents. We never got a lot of teens coming here to hang. The ones who did were sorta nuisance. That's why we had to paint over the graffiti on the walls. He pointed to the wall next to the entrance. I was stunned to see the wall that white when I walked in was now blue. That was strange. I know I saw a white wall a second ago. I got a chill up my spine and decided it wasn't worth the effort trying to make Ray remember me. It's not like we were close. Well, maybe I got the wrong deli. Sorry to bother you. I headed towards the exit. Oh, don't feel bad. Ray sounded genuinely sympathetic. I've been working here so long, and I'm coming along in age. There ain't a lot I do remember. I turned and smiled. It's okay. It's just nice to be back in town. Despite being less than a foot away from him a second ago, it was only now I realized how much he had aged. Somehow during our conversation, I missed the wrinkles on his face and the dark spots on his arm that could only come from Father Time. His teeth had become a darker shade of yellow that I never knew existed. This sudden change gave me chills. So deep, I needed winter coat. I shook my head, thanked Ray, and shuffled out of the store. I left the store in shock of Ray's sudden burst of age and the thought that he could have forgotten us when we practically lived at the place. I guess I had to chalk this up to growing up and realizing that some people didn't think about you as much as you thought. I turned to give the place one last look and felt shook at the sign now read, Matcha Town. I looked back and forth, but Ray's was gone as if I walked into the wrong store. I looked inside to see if I just missed the title, but the store was completely different with a new cast of people that I didn't recognize from half a minute ago. I walked back into the store to prove I was just delirious, but what I entered was an upscale matcha tea store. I turned and ran out as a contrast to the ambient jazz and peaceful tea aficionados that sat in what should have been the ruins of my childhood. I jumped in my car and drove south down Garrison Street, noticing the first time since I arrived home that the main drag looked remodeled like a cute strip mall that sprung up overnight. I looked for stores I could have sworn were there before I walked in Ray's, but found that I might have been imagining things. Maybe I was so homesick, I made up an entire conversation. The only building that made me feel like I was in the right place was the post office I'd always pass on my way to school. As I drove, I came by my old high school, and it looked surprisingly similar to when I used to attend the place. Normally a school will do some renovations, but it looked as if the district wanted to keep it as a time capsule to preserve a certain style. I parked and got out to take a good look at the place, and noticed some of the finger marks on the windows were still there. I saw the initials I smudged on the front window on my last day and wondered why it hadn't been cleaned. I opened the door to my past and went to the front desk. Hi, I'm Rena Winkle. I went to this school and wondered if I could look at a yearbook. I was class of '09. The clerk brought out an '09 yearbook. Here, kind of small class that year. I flipped through the yearbook looking for Callie, but she was missing. Excuse me. I think there are people missing from this book. Was it edited? The clerk gave me a puzzled look. I don't think so. I'm not sure why we do that. That book has been here as long as I can remember. I looked for my friend Matt. Like Callie, he was not in his spot. I remembered a quote about never becoming his father, who was also one of the teachers. I just can't find people who I know were on here. Is there any chance that the book had two versions? She gave me a quizzical look. I don't think so, especially that year considering we had less people attending. It wouldn't have been practical. I saw Mr. Pruder, my old gym teacher, walking looking at papers. Mr. Pruder, he looked at me like he got the wrong food at a drive-thru. Hey, how's it going? I sensed his hesitation. Do you remember me? Rena? From third period back in '08. You helped bandage my shins after that accident. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry. Let's talk a little later. I have to finish a few things. He sped into another room like he was trying to avoid hugging a drunk aunt. I left the building feeling like I got rejected by my own past. I turned to see if the same stickers were still on the back door and almost screamed at the realization that the school had changed. The building appeared modern and had a new gate. Maybe I was losing it. I had heard of having a type of mental illness where you're just stuck in a delusion until you see a certain reality that you've been avoiding. The only problem with that theory is I'm not trying to avoid anything. I peeked inside the office, and it was closed and had been empty this whole time. As I was rationalizing this crap, I turned to look at Knickerbocker Park and felt the need to relive some of my youthful summers. I passed the park gate and made my way to the statue of Dietrich Knickerbocker and sat by the base. I immediately felt all fuzzy and wanted someone here with me to reminisce about all the fun times my friends and I had at this place. I gazed out in a panoramic style and felt like it was still the summer '08 and me and a few buds were waiting for someone to bring us beers to celebrate the start of the weekend. I looked at the statue and saw the plaque, which had a small group of teens engraved into it. I looked closer at the feel-good plaque and realized the people engraved on it looked a lot like me and Callie. There was a poem engraved above us. Keepers of the future come before the past remains. The statue was dated 1983, which was weird considering I was born in 1990, and the characters were MySpace pics from 2007. How had I never noticed this before? I reached to my bronze face, but was stopped by two smooth hands grabbing my shoulder and turning me around to the face of a woman. The look in this woman's eyes felt like something out of a dream. Even though I didn't this woman, I felt like I was caught doing something I shouldn't. It was as if I were about to be punished by my mother. It took me a moment to realize I was staring into the eyes of the woman in the distorted pics of my friends and me at the lake and around the town. I was trying to seem like I wasn't about to run home and cry. "You're not supposed to be here." She spoke with firmness that made me wish she had screamed. Her voice made my brain split open a bit. "I'm just Leah. I don't know what you..." I managed to choke out. The woman clasped her hands onto my face. "You're done here. Get out." The next thing I knew, I was inside a motel room, looking out at the crimson sunset with a glass of whiskey in my hand. As I hazily felt the ridges of the glass while trying to piece together where I was spatially, I got a text from a random number. The number was 111-111-1110. The message read, "Thank you for your time. Your work is done." Winky face. This is where I find myself now. The sun is setting, and I no longer know which way to go. There seems to be only one road, so I'm going to leave as soon as I get the courage to leave the motel. Has anyone experienced this? What happened to my town?